Chapter 640. Lin Yi, your aura. Looking at the high-spirited Lin Yi, Qing Yu's face was full of surprise. Little talk following a dream. She could not believe that in just 2 days, Lin Yi, who was so weak that she could not even sense his divine will, had recovered to such a level. Haha, the speed of recovery is a little slow. Lin Yi laughed softly. This time, I'm afraid I'll have to rely on the few of you to pass through this ruin. The corner of Qing Yu's mouth twitched. She stared at Lin Yi for a moment, then suddenly turned and walked in the direction of the heavenly thunder realm. She swallowed the word freak and did not say it out loud. For those with talent, it might be easier to cultivate the power of divine sense, but once it was damaged, it would be difficult for them to recover. Many people needed several years to recover, but Lin Yi recovered from having no divine will to more than 30 levels in just 3 days. This speed was beyond Qing Yu's imagination. Looking at Qing Yu's back, Lin Yi shook his head and quickly followed. A moment later, Lin Yi and Qing Yu arrived at the side of the heavenly thunder realm and waited silently. Although the inner and outer courtyards were not connected, there were passages connecting the inner and outer courtyards for the convenience of accepting missions and for some special circumstances. Coincidentally, it was around the heavenly thunder realm. After waiting for a while, before Lin Yi could say anything, the passage at the side had already released a dazzling and bright light. 6 figures appeared, each of them surging with saint power. This surprised Lin Yi. The weakest of the 6 was a pinnacle saint, and their divine sense power was surging. It was extraordinary. According to Lin Yi's judgment, their divine will was at least 5th level. With the power of a 5th grade divine will and the power of a peak saint, he could even put up a fight against a great saint. While Lin Yi was sizing up the 6 people, they were also sizing up Lin Yi. When they realized that Lin Yi was only at the middle stage of the saint realm and his divine sense was extremely weak, they couldn't help but frown. Senior brother Feng, senior brother Yu, you're early. Qing Yu greeted those people with a calm expression, without any restraint. Qingwei, is this the friend you mentioned? Feng Toyoi glanced at Lin Yi and said indifferently, it seems that he doesn't match the realm you mentioned. This time, we agreed to find a divine will saint to decipher the ruins. With his little divine will power, he doesn't seem to be a divine will saint. The other person yawned and said disdainfully, this kid doesn't seem to be qualified to go to the ruins. Could he be related to you? Lin Yi self-destructed his divine will power when he was carrying out a mission some time ago. That's why he became like this. Qing Yu said indifferently, I won't casually pull people in. Even I admit that I'm not as good as him in terms of divine will control. It will definitely be helpful to bring him along. Qingwei, this ruin doesn't belong to you alone. Instantly, someone's voice gradually turned cold. Obviously, after sensing Lin Yi's strength, they didn't want to bring Lin Yi along. No need to say any more. Feng Toyoi shook his head and said, we can bring him along, but we have enough people now. It's best not to bring the person he pulled along. Oh, hearing that, Lin Yi's face instantly darkened. If they had rejected at the beginning, it would be fine. But they had already agreed. Only now did they say to kick Shen Qingyan out. Wasn't that not giving him face? Not only Lin Yi, but Qing Yu's face was also as gloomy as water. It was especially terrifying. The person Lin Yi recommended is in the invincible saint realm. He has the ability to kill a mid-stage great sage. We definitely need him, Qing Yu said in a deep voice. Although it's the divine will heavenly saint relic, the mechanisms might not be related to divine will. If we bring that person along, even if something happens, we'll be able to deal with it. Okay, but if we bring that person along, then he can't go. Feng Toyoi shrugged and looked at Lin Yi with disdain and some anger in his eyes. Noticing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown slightly. He had never come into contact with Feng Toyoi. Why would Feng Toyoi be angry with him? Huh? Are you deliberately looking for trouble? Qing Yu sneered. You didn't say it earlier and waited until today. What do you mean? Nothing, Feng Toyoi said indifferently. There aren't many good things in the heavenly saint relic. There are only 7 of us. If you rashly bring one person, we can still accept it. But if you want to bring another person in to share the treasures with us, we naturally won't be happy. That's right. As soon as he said that, the other sneered. That relic was discovered by the seven of us. Why do we have to share it? Chinyu, bringing others will only hinder us. Enough. Chinyu shouted and took a deep breath. She said in a deep voice, only one person can go. 8 people is the bottom line that we can accept. Feng Toyoi spread out his hands. Huh. Lin Yi suddenly said, Chinyu, aren't you afraid of being hit by a stick when exploring with such an untrustworthy person? Of course I'm afraid. Chinyu sneered. Feng Toyoi and the others looked at Lin Yi with cold eyes. Kid, as an outer court freshman, how can you talk to your senior brother like this? Hurry up and apologize and get lost. The relic of a heavenly saint expert isn't something that an ant like you can explore. As they spoke, 3 figures stepped forward and surrounded Lin Yi. This is, raising his eyebrows. Lin Yi looked at them indifferently. You want to fight? Not fight, but teach junior brother a lesson. They sneered. At the same time, let junior brother understand how to talk to your senior brother. As they spoke, the saint energy in their bodies rumbled and surged like waves of saint aura, falling on Lin Yi. Feng Toyoi and the others sneered and did not stop them. On the contrary, they secretly sealed Chinyu, not allowing her to move. In an instant, Chinyu's face was extremely gloomy. No matter what, she was the one who called Lin Yi here. Feng Toyoi and the others' actions made her furious. Rumble. Suddenly, a loud and clear sound rang out, and a sharp saber chi flew out, shattering the holy aura in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and rolled his eyes. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face. The power in his body calmed down again. Who's there? Feng Toyoi and the others were shocked and immediately took a few steps back. They shouted and kept looking around. Buzz. A fluctuation bloomed and the passage opened again. A graceful figure quietly appeared. At the same time, a cold voice blew into the ears of Feng Toyoi and the others like a cold wind. TSK, little lunatic, you guys are really powerful. You even dare to bully my people? Today's 50 chapters are over. Everyone, vote and tip. Continue tomorrow. Chapter 641. Who's there? You're courting death. How dare you call me that? Hearing that, Feng Tiany's mouth twitched, and he was furious. He turned around and looked at the passage coldly. The rest of them sneered and were ready to attack. However, when the light in the passage dissipated and the figure was revealed, Feng Tiany and the rest had strange expressions on their faces. Their mouths twitched and their eyelids twitched. They did not even dare to speak. Seeing this scene, Chinyu couldn't help but raise her brows slightly and size up that person. She was a charming young girl with a graceful figure and a beautiful face that could move one's soul. Especially when she smiled, there was a boundless charm to her. Xinghua was surprised. She did not understand why Feng Tiany and the rest were so shocked and frightened when they saw such a pretty girl. Qing Yu's eyes moved. When she saw Lin Yi revealing a smile, her heart skipped a beat. When she sized up the young lady again, her gaze had already changed. TSK, little lunatic. You're so arrogant. It's fine if you don't take my people seriously, but you dare to reject me when we're going to explore the ruins? The corners of Shun Qingyun's mouth curled up. She walked to Toyota, E, and the others and revealed a bright smile. Although her smile was bright, Feng Tiany and the rest were trembling with fear. They turned around and saw that Lin Yi was also smiling. They could not help but feel depressed. Damn it, if you know the demoness, you should have said so earlier. If they had known earlier, they would not have treated Lin Yi like this, even if they were beaten to death. Shun Qingyun might be well-behaved in front of Lin Yi, but most of the time, no one could control her. What? Shun Qingyun narrowed her eyes and said, Now that I'm here, are you still going to chase me away? We wouldn't dare. We wouldn't dare. After coughing a few times, Feng Tiany and the rest quickly waved their hands and shouted, If Senior Sister Shun is willing, why would we chase you away? Senior Sister Shun, you're very powerful. We're happy to have you here. Why would we reject you? At least you know what's good for you. Shun Qingyun's face turned serious when she heard this, and she shouted in a low voice, "Those ruins were left behind by the Academy for us to temper ourselves. It wasn't for all of you to fight for treasures there." The expressions of Toyota, E, and the others changed slightly. "However, since you're the ones who found the ruins, I won't snatch it from you. If there are any interesting treasures in the ruins, I will take one. If you don't, I won't take a single one." Shen Xingyun tilted her head slightly and looked at Toyota, E, and the others. After all, the relics were found by those people. Shen Xingyun's goal was Lin Yi. She would not touch those treasures. Sure enough, when they heard Shen Xingyun's words, Feng Toyoi and the others suddenly showed ecstasy, but they soon showed a conflicted look and said, "Senior Sister Shun, this is not appropriate, right?" "That's right. With Senior Apprentice Sister Shun, our trip to the ruins this time definitely won't be dangerous. If you don't take anything, we won't be able to live with ourselves. Yes, Senior Apprentice Sister Shun, you'd better take it. We don't care about those treasures." The next moment, Toyota, E, and the others looked quite heroic and generous. "Forget it. But if I don't take it, it doesn't mean that my people won't take it." Shen Xingyin raised her eyebrows and ignored Toyota, E, and the others. She walked to Lin Ye's side and said indifferently, "If you target him again, I'll wring your heads off." "Ahem, we wouldn't dare." Hearing this, Toyota, E, and the others' expressions changed slightly, and they quickly replied. At the same time, they looked at Lin Yi, their eyes full of doubts. They couldn't believe that the little witch, who had always been lawless, was protecting a male student today. At this time, even if Lin Ye's strength was not in their eyes, they were still full of admiration for Lin Yi. No matter what his strength was, to have the guts to be with the little witch in their eyes was already a great courage. "Junior apprentice brother Lin, how are you going to thank me this time?" Seeing this scene, Shen Xingyin smiled and stared at Lin Yi. "Then how do you want me to thank you?" Lin Yi waved his hand and said helplessly, "I don't have any points, but I want a person." Bah! Hearing this, Shen Xingyin blushed slightly and said softly, "You're worthless? Oomph. Then you owe me a favor." Lin Yi shook his head helplessly, but he was quite surprised. At first, it was only Peng Tianyu and the others who said how powerful Shen Xingyin was. He didn't have a clear understanding. This time, he saw with his own eyes that several powerful divine saints were so afraid of her. Only then did he realize how powerful Shen Xingyin was. Not far away, Toyota, E, and the others were shocked when they heard the conversation between Lin Yi and Shen Xingyin. They couldn't believe that someone dared to flirt with Shen Xingyin. What surprised them even more was that Shen Xingyin wasn't angry. Could it be that the little witch who dominated the inner yard was really subdued by an outer yard freshman? Gulp. At this point, Toyota, E, and the others couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They didn't dare to disrespect Lin Yi anymore. Lin Yi and the others were not afraid, but Shen Xingyin was enough to make them retreat. When Xingwei saw this scene, her expression was quite strange. She thought that this matter would be difficult to resolve and might even be delayed. She didn't expect that everything would be resolved as soon as Shen Xingyin appeared. At this time, Toyota, E, and the others didn't dare to make a fuss. Even if Shen Xingyin demanded an exorbitant price, they wouldn't dare to resist. This also made Qingwei suspect Shen Xingyun's identity. If it was just her strength, she shouldn't have made Toyota, E, and the others so afraid. "All right, introduce yourselves. Tell me everyone's abilities, and let's get familiar." Shen Xingyun suddenly said, "I've been to the Heavenly Saint Relic several times. It's very dangerous. We must be united. Otherwise, there will definitely be danger." Hearing this, Toyota, E, and the others looked at each other and began to introduce themselves, including their own abilities. Shen Xingyun was powerful and had connections with many powerhouses in the inner yard. She had been to the Heavenly Saint Relic many times, so they naturally chose to believe her. This was their first time entering a Heavenly Saint Relic, so they didn't dare to be negligent. After a while, Toyota, E, and the others finished their introductions. After Lin Yi and Qing Yue took down all the information, they also began to introduce themselves. After everyone was done, Lin Yi and the others turned their attention to Shen Qingyan. All right, the introductions are over. Let's go. Shen Qingyan smiled and looked at Lin Yi. She laughed softly and said, "Your divine sense hasn't recovered yet. Do you need me to protect you?" Huh. Amidst the laughter, Shen Qingyan's figure flashed and flew out immediately. Little madman, quickly lead the way. In a chapter. Chapter 642. The Saint's spiritual mountains were covered in endless greenery, like a sea of trees. Lin Yi, Shen Qingyan, and the rest were led by Toyota Yi as they wandered in the sea of trees, looking for the entrance to the ruins. After wandering for a while, Toyota Yi stopped in front of a dense patch of fir trees. "We're here." Toyota Yi looked around and let out a long sigh of relief. He immediately landed and floated in front of the fir trees. "Is this the ruins?" Frowning slightly, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyan, and Qing Yu had never seen the ruins before and were surprised. Looking around, their faces became more and more ugly. Behind them was a cliff. Looking down, they could only see a vast expanse of white fog. As for the fir trees in front, they were extremely dense, as if they were solid. Looking at each other, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyan, and the rest could not help but be suspicious. How could the ruins be in such a place? Could it be that the ruins of the spiritual saint were different from the ruins of ordinary heavenly saints? That's right. Toyota Yi grinned and said, "The entrance to the ruins will only appear at noon every day. Everyone must be careful. The entrance can only be maintained for 5 breaths of time. If you miss it, you can only wait until the next day to open it again." Hearing this, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyan, and the rest were still a little hesitant, but seeing Toyota Yi's solemn vow, they could only choose to wait. Time passed bit by bit. Soon, the sun rose, and the blazing light gathered and condensed into a ray of light. It happened to shine on the dense fir trees at a straight angle. In an instant, the fir trees reflected the light, colorful and spreading in all directions. At the same time, the light mixed with the scorching sun fell below the cliff. "It's coming." Seeing this scene, Toyota Yi's face turned solemn, and his breathing quickened. Buzz, buzz. An invisible force bloomed and slowly spread out. Sensing this, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyan, and the rest looked around and suddenly realized that the white fog below the cliff was emitting a colorful light and was rushing up at an extremely fast speed. Buzz! Amidst their astonishment, the mist that filled the sky flickered with a 7-colored light and enveloped Lin Yi's group. It contained a special kind of power. Noticing this, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyan's expressions changed slightly. They quickly got up, but Toyota Yi's voice rang in their ears. "Don't move. The power in the fog can allow us to enter the ruins safely." Hearing this, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyan frowned slightly. They hesitated for a moment and chose to believe in Toyota. However, their bodies were still filled with vigilance. As long as something happened, the two of them would leave immediately. Buzz, buzz. As the 7-colored fog spread out, Lin Yi suddenly felt that there was a special will in his body. It's actually a divine will imprint. Billy Yuo's voice suddenly sounded. Lin Yi rolled his eyes and quickly asked, "What's the use of the spiritual force imprint? Is there any danger?" "There's no danger," Billy Yuo said in a deep voice. "The spiritual force imprint is just a mark. However, generally speaking, those who were able to understand this were definitely powerhouses. Phew! Now I'm looking forward to this trip to the ruins. Perhaps you can gain a lot of benefits. I only hope that there's a treasure that can restore my divine willpower." After knowing that the spiritual force imprint was not dangerous, Lin Yi was completely relieved. His eyes were fixed on the fir tree in front of him. In his line of sight, the 7-colored fog was getting thicker and thicker. It had already shrouded their bodies. They could not see their surroundings at all. They could only sense the aura of the others. "This fog is quite strange." Shen Qingyan's voice sounded. I seem to feel that something is flowing in my body. That's right. Toyota, he smiled and said, seeing your sister Shun is really amazing. You could tell it the first time. Hearing this, Linyi could not help but curl his lips. He did not expect these guys to be so good at licking his boots. They were quite arrogant before, but now they were as obedient as puppies. At this moment, the seven-colored fog wrapped around the fir trees in the sky. They blended with each other and gradually bloomed into a silver-white brilliance. Suddenly, the silver-white brilliance shone. All the seven-colored light faded and turned into silver light. They gathered together and formed a light door. The holy aura rippled and shocked everyone's mind. This is the time. Hurry up and rush in. After all, Toyota, he had seen it several times. He was the first to react. He exclaimed and immediately jumped up. Like a flexible fish, he rushed directly into the light door. In an instant, Lin Yi and the others were suddenly awakened. They flew up and rushed toward the light door. Almost at the moment when the last figure rushed in, the light door dissipated. The sky was filled with holy light. The seven-colored brilliance and the silver-white brilliance dissipated, leaving only the endless dense fir trees. Lin only felt his whole body go numb, and he fainted. When he woke up again, there was no one beside him. Hiss! Damn it, where are the others? Lin got up and shook his head violently. He looked around and was shocked. He couldn't help but gasp. At this very moment, Lin Yi was actually situated in a sacred medicinal garden. The rich medicinal fragrance rushed to his face, making Lin Yi excited. After looking carefully, Lin Yi was even more ecstatic. He didn't even think about Shun Qingyun, Qingyu, and the others. He rushed to the sacred herbs and looked carefully. This is the soul-raising herb. It can increase one's soul power. This is Azure Sky. It can recover one's soul power. Oh my god, this is the soul-guiding ginseng, and it's more than 1,000 years old. With these sacred herbs, I'm afraid it won't take half a month for my soul power to recover to its peak. I can even go one step further. Looking around, Lin Yu was ecstatic and couldn't help but laugh. In this sacred medicinal garden, there are all kinds of herbs that could recover one's soul and soul power. They were all quite old and had powerful effects. With these herbs, Lin Yu didn't need any treasures. He could recover his soul and soul power in a short time. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Lin Yi quickly dug out the sacred herbs and put them into the 9-layer space. However, just as he put them in, Lin Yi frowned and suddenly stopped. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. That's not right. If I really found so many sacred herbs, why didn't Biluo say anything? Looking around, Lin Yi's heart trembled. He immediately called for Biluo. However, there was no response. This is an illusion. In a chapter. Chapter 643. I didn't expect that this damned ruin would be an illusion. After realizing that this was an illusion, Lin Yi rubbed his nose and stopped walking around. Instead, he sat down and looked around. Since it was an illusion, there must be a way to break it. As he looked around, Lin Yi could not help but complain about Feng Tianyi. That guy had been to the ruin several times, but he did not remind them that there was an illusion at the beginning. Forget about the illusion. Feng Tianyi and the others might not realize that it was an illusion, but why did he not even remind them that they would be separated? After complaining for a while, Lin Yi's expression changed, but another idea came to his mind. Could it be that there were more of them this time, which was why there were changes in the ruins? It seems that the most important thing now is to break the illusion. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi got up and glanced at the herb garden for a moment. Suddenly, violent saint power surged in his body. Sky-destroying finger. Celestial Emperor fist. Sky-freezing aurora. In an instant, saint power surged. The shadow of a golden index finger and the biting wind of the fist, mixed with a sharp aura, suddenly filled the entire space of the herb garden. Boom, boom, boom. The wind whistled, and the violent power swept out. In just an instant, the herb garden shattered, and countless sacred herbs scattered in all directions, turning into dust and drifting in the air. Huh! With a soft shout, Lin Yi continued to attack, and the boundless herb garden continued to collapse. In just 10 minutes, all the herb gardens within sight of Lin Yi's naked eye were destroyed and completely collapsed. However, the illusion did not disappear, and the ground was full of broken sacred herb dust. Hiss! The herb garden has collapsed, but the illusion still exists? Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi calmed down and thought carefully. Could it be that the illusion did not rely on the herb garden, nor the sacred herbs? Looking up and looking around, there was nothing except the broken herb garden, and only the vast world was left. Could it be that the illusion relies on this world to exist? With a slight frown, Lin Yi leaped up again. Flames appeared in his hand, and the heavenly sword 12 styles burst out. Sharp sword chi soared into the sky and pierced toward the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The whistling sword chi swept past, but gradually disappeared from Lin Yi's sight. Floating in the air, Lin Yi looked at the distant sky and immediately calmed down. If the illusory realm was based on heaven and earth, then this heaven and earth must be illusory. Right now, the heavenly sword 12 styles didn't touch anything and only dissipated. He himself had been flying for so long and still hadn't reached the end. Obviously, the world here was the real world. Hiss! This illusion is quite powerful. Biting his lips, Lin Yi was extremely depressed. At this time, his divine sense had not recovered yet. Otherwise, if he encountered this kind of illusion, he could have easily broken it with a sweep of his divine sense. For a moment, Lin Yi's mind was filled with thoughts as he tried to think of a way to break the illusion. At the same time, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others were also trapped in the illusion. However, in their illusions, none of them disappeared. They were actually a team, exploring together. Everyone's illusion was similar, but there were subtle differences, but it seemed very real. Even Shun Qingyun didn't notice any abnormalities. In the illusion, she led Lin Yi and the others to explore the ruins, protecting Lin Yi along the way. The broken herb garden gradually recovered. The dust in the air condensed into stalks of sacred herbs again, appearing in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi, who was meditating, noticed this and became more certain that he was in the illusion. However, he couldn't think of any way to break the illusion. During this time, he used all the supreme sacred weapons on him, either to attack or to look for flaws, but he didn't find anything. If it weren't for the gradually recovering herb garden and sacred herbs, Lin Yi would even suspect that he was overthinking. Time flowed by, and soon, 2 hours had passed. The sacred herbs and herb garden were completely restored, and a strong medicinal fragrance rushed to Lin Yi's face, invading his mind. This D*MN illusion. How can there be no sustenance? It's so real. Logically speaking, there should be sustenance. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, and just as he was about to attack again, he was stunned. No, I seem to have overlooked something. His eyes turned, and a thought suddenly appeared in Lin Yi's mind. Since this world, the herb garden, and the sacred herbs weren't sustenance of the illusion, then what about the people? The reason why he felt that the illusion was real and scary was that Lin Yi saw the herb garden, the sacred herbs, in this world. However, if Lin Yi couldn't see these things, did it mean that the illusion didn't exist? Yes, the illusion itself is fake. As long as I don't believe it, it can't affect me. With this thought, Lin Yi's eyes turned, and he casually walked in a direction. Along the way, even if he stepped on sacred herbs, cracks in the ground, or uneven ground, Lin Yi's emotions did not fluctuate. He treated them as if they didn't exist, directly stepping on them. Patter, patter. The footsteps became louder and louder. A mark in Lin Yi's body released a silver-white light and slowly floated out. Buzz. After taking just over 30 steps, the mark in Lin Yi's body erupted. In the next moment, the silver-white light was dazzling. When the light dimmed again, the herb garden and sacred herbs that filled the sky disappeared without a trace. What appeared next to Lin Yi was a pile of thick white fog. Even with Lin Yi's cultivation, he could not see what was in the white fog. He could only see a vast expanse of whiteness. "You finally woke up." Biluo's voice rang out. Lin Yi immediately released a long breath. He could finally confirm that he had charged out of the illusion. Heavenly Saint ruins indeed can't be underestimated. I didn't expect that right after entering. It gave us a show of strength. Lin Yi said with some lingering fear. "Biluo, can you sense the things around you?" "I can't," Biluo said in a deep voice. "The divine sense here is too strong, too special. I can't appear for long. All of this can only rely on you." Then you pay attention. Don't get hurt." Lin Yi nodded his head slightly, sizing up the thick fog around him, and could not help but frown deeply. Buzz, buzz, buzz. An invisible wave bloomed, accompanied by the flickering of the mark. The white fog around Lin Yi immediately dissipated. Once the white fog dissipated, the scene in front of Lin Yi immediately became clear. Lifting his eyes to look, Lin Yi cried out in surprise. In front of him, there were several people lying. It was Qingwei, Feng Tianyi, and the rest. Shun Qingyun sat cross-legged on the ground, her brows tightly knitted. Her expression was grave, and her forehead was full of sweat. Could it be that she also noticed something wrong? Detecting this point, Lin Yi immediately became curious. Wonder what Shun Qingyun's illusion would be like. Swoosh! A silver-white light suddenly bloomed from Shun Qingyun's body, instantly enveloping Lin Yi. Into this chapter. Chapter 644. Swoosh! The silver-white light moved extremely fast. Before Lin Yi could react, he was already enveloped by the light. The next moment, he felt numbness all over his body, and then he appeared in a large hall. Boom! 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 The violent saint energy trembled, causing the entire hall to shake violently. Lin Yi looked up and saw Shun Qingyun holding a long saber, fighting with Lin Yi, Qingwei, and the others. Surging, sharp saber chi kept emerging, cutting the space apart and creating a series of air-piercing sounds. Bang! Bang! Saber chi flew everywhere, and every time it hit the hall, it would shake violently. Not far away, Feng Tianyi and the others were cowering in fear, as if they did not even dare to look at Shun Qingyun. Seeing this, Lin Yi felt as if a bolt of lightning had struck his heart. Immediately, an idea flashed through his mind. That's right. Everything created by this illusion is what we want to see. I want to recover my soul energy and divine thought power. And what appeared in front of me was the sacred medicinal garden. Unfortunately, I have Biluo and the ninefold space to protect me, so the illusion can't read my mind. It can only know what I want. Therefore, the illusion is not obvious, and I can break it. Light flashed in Lin Yi's eyes, and his breathing became more rapid. He had found a way to break the illusion. In other words, as long as I can make them understand that everyone in the illusion is fake, it will be fine. No, even if I know the principle, it will be difficult to remind them. Thinking of this, Lin Yi could not help but scratch his head, puzzled. He knew how to break the illusion, but how could he tell the others? In the illusion, people's five senses were sealed, and they could not hear or sense anything. Even if their heads were cut off, they would not have any reaction. Of course, as sage-level masters, if someone attacked them, their saint power would automatically protect them, and they would not be killed easily. Just as Lin Yi was thinking about how to break the illusion of others, Shun Qingyun, who was fighting with the illusion, finally confirmed that the Lin Yi in her illusion was fake. Damn it, you must be a fake. Where did junior brother Lin go? Holding the long saber, Shun Qingyun stared at Lin Yi, and then turned her gaze to Feng Tianyi and the others. No matter how scared little crazy and the others are of me, they would not be so cowardly. We, Cebu Gakuin's people, are not like this. All of this is fake. Understanding this, Shun Qingyun suddenly felt relieved. She shook her head with a bitter smile, turned around, put away her long saber, and looked coldly at Lin Yi and Qingwei. Not far away, Lin Yi saw this scene and was stunned. He did not expect Shun Qingyun to react so quickly. She is indeed an inner yard student, and she is indeed known as the Little Witch. Such sharp observation skills are really powerful. Lin Yi grinned, waiting for Shun Qingyun to leave the illusion. With Shun Qingyun's help, it would be much easier to break the illusion for the others. Buzz, buzz, buzz. However, after Shun Qingyun put away her long saber, the illusion did not end. Lin Yi and Qinghua looked at each other and smiled ferociously. Then, they exploded with violent strength and attacked Shun Qingyun. Heavenly Emperor Fist. Sky-destroying finger. Lin Yi formed a fist with one hand and extended the index finger of the other. An attack full of destructive power suddenly fell. Shun Qingyun had never seen Qingyue's attack before, so she did not use a fixed move. It was just a surging divine thought attack that was like a huge mountain pressing down on Shun Qingyun. Hiss! This attack looks terrifying. Lin Yi touched his nose and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. It had to be said that the illusion was extremely powerful. The attacks of the Heavenly Emperor Fist and Sky-Destroying Finger were very similar. It was just that the core power was different. However, it was extremely lifelike. Even Lin Yi was shocked when he felt the attack. Thoughts of resistance surged in his mind. However, in the face of such a surging attack, Shun Qingyun was extremely calm. Her expression did not change at all. She looked at the attack as if she was looking at nothingness. Rumble. The violent saint power fell. Just as it was about to fall on Shun Qingyun, a silver-white light flashed. All the power and all the figures quietly dissipated like snow under the scorching sun. Lin Yi only felt dizzy. When he opened his eyes again, he looked down and saw that Shun Qingyun, who was originally sitting cross-legged on the ground, was slowly opening her eyes. Lin. Shun Qingyun woke up and shook her head violently. She looked at Lin Yi and asked in confusion, "Junior brother Lin?" "Hee, senior sister Shun, you're amazing. You came out of the illusion so quickly," Lin Yi said with a grin. Hearing the word illusion, Shun Qingyun carefully looked at Lin Yi again. After confirming his aura, she suddenly let out a sigh of relief. "I didn't expect this relic to be so abnormal. It was an illusion as soon as I entered, and it was so realistic. Fortunately, I reacted in the end. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if I fell into it again. The illusion was different from other mechanisms. Its danger would increase as time passed. In the end, if people were unable to realize that it was an illusion, they would be trapped in the illusion, unable to escape for the rest of their lives." As she spoke, another mark appeared in Shun Qingyun's body. It shone with a silver-white light and dispersed the surrounding white fog. In a split second, the surrounding environment suddenly opened up. So this is how the mark is used. Shun Qingyun looked around, then raised her head to look at the mark. She suddenly understood. Lin Yi glanced at Shun Qingyun's mark, but found that the light emitted by her mark was not as bright as his. This surprised him. Shun Qingyun's realm was higher than Lin Yi's, so Shun Qingyun's mark should be stronger. "Senior sister Shun, what should we do next?" Lin Yi touched his nose and asked. "They're still in the illusion. If we wait any longer, there may be problems. We have to think of a way quickly." Shun Qingyun's brows were tightly knitted together. She bit her finger and fell in a deep thought. After a while, Shun Qingyun suddenly said, "That's not right, Junior brother Lin. Didn't your divine sense collapse? How could you be the first to wake up? And the power contained in your mark seems to be stronger than mine." As soon as she finished speaking, Shun Qingyun's eyes lit up as she stared fixedly at Lin Yi. "Me?" Lin Yi blinked. His face was full of helplessness. "What time is it now? You're still thinking about this?" Shun Qingyun said proudly, "You are so weak, but you were the first to escape from the illusion. Maybe the way you escaped can be used to save them." End of chapter. Chapter 645. You're so weak, but you're still the first to escape from the illusion. Maybe your method of escaping can be used to save them. Shun Qingyun stared at Lin Yi proudly. Indeed, according to a normal person's point of view, Shun Qingyun should be the first to break free from the illusion. However, Lin Yi was the first to break free from the illusion which was surprising. I'm talented. The illusion can't trap me at all. Lin Yi said helplessly, my method doesn't work on them at all. You're talented? Blinking her eyes, Shen Xingyun sized up Lin Yi. She held back her laughter and said, are you joking with me? Who says they're talented? Lin Yi waved his hand and said, if you don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. My method can only work on me. It's not useful on them. Indeed, not everyone had a powerful soul body in their mind, or a strange existence like the ninefold space. As a result, the illusion couldn't read Lin Ye's mind at all, and the illusion that was revealed was naturally full of flaws. Seeing how certain Lin Yi was, Shen Xingyun frowned slightly and couldn't help but murmur, this is troublesome. Looking at their situation, it's obvious that they're all immersed in the illusion. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi suddenly said, the strength of this illusion isn't very strong. As long as they can sense that something is wrong with the others and that it's an illusion, they can break free. Hearing this, Shen Xingyun recalled the scene when she broke free and nodded slightly. Yes, it's true, but in this case, I can still understand Qingwei falling into it. Little crazy, and the others are old partners. How can they not sense that something is wrong? An illusion is an illusion after all. The people it transforms are not three-dimensional, so it's easy to sense that something is wrong. At this point, Shen Xingyun glanced at Lin Yi. Obviously, Shen Xingyun noticed that something was wrong with Lin Yi and realized that it was an illusion. Then what should we do? Lin Yi said helplessly, we're in an illusion, and our 5 senses are sealed. It's hard to tell them. If I can enter their illusions, there might be a way. Shen Xingyun frowned and whispered. Hearing this, Lin Yi immediately coughed, but he did not dare to say that he had entered her illusion, but he knew that it was useless. This illusory realm wasn't difficult, but if he wanted to break it, he had to rely on himself. Sai, you guys are so stupid. Suddenly, Biluo spoke again in Lin Ye's mind. You haven't noticed those imprints yet? When a person breaks the illusion, there will be an imprint. The way to break the illusion is in the imprint. Suddenly hearing Biluo's voice, Lin Yi was slightly surprised. He immediately summoned the imprint, condensed it in the palm of his hand, and observed it carefully. Buzz! The imprint rotated slowly, and the silver-white radiance contained in it rippled, clearing the white fog around him again. Imprint? Sensing the power contained in the imprint, Shen Xingyun's eyes turned, and she suddenly exclaimed, you have an imprint on you, and I also have an imprint after breaking the illusion. Maybe the key to breaking the illusion lies in this imprint. Yes. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi said in a low voice, Senior Sister Shen, take out the imprint too. Maybe there will be a change when the 2 imprints are combined. Okay. Shen Xingyun's mind moved slightly, and the imprint floated to Lin Ye's palm. Boom! Almost at the moment when the 2 imprints were close to each other, a strong force emerged and suddenly merged them together. Buzz, buzz, buzz! Invisible waves like a hurricane spread out and swept outwards. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged, and a lot of the white fog that had been swept away earlier appeared. The fog drifted and actually formed a special diagram. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The silver-white radiance gradually flashed according to the order. A strange power burst out from the radiance, and suddenly enveloped Lin Yi and Shen Xingyun. Feeling the strange power, Lin Yi and Shen Xingyun looked at each other. Just as they were about to speak, the imprint suddenly burst out a ray of light and covered the 2 of them. Why? In an instant, Lin Yi and Shen Xingyun felt their bodies tremble. When they reacted again, they were already in a special space. In the space, there were countless light screens, and on each light screen, there were many figures. After looking carefully, Lin Yi and Shen Xingyun's faces changed slightly, and they were quite surprised. Those light screens were the illusions that those who had entered the ruins in the past had experienced. Could this be the center of the illusions? Why do I feel that something is wrong? These illusions, shouldn't they be formations? Why are there central mechanisms and things like that? Could this be a mechanism? Shun Qingyun bit her lips, and her face was full of disbelief. Such illusions were not scary. Divine, well, heavenly saints, no matter how proficient they were in formations, could almost do that. However, if the illusions were turned into a huge mechanism that could trap countless people, it would be terrifying. No matter how strong the formation was, it had a time limit, and it needed saint power and people to control it. However, mechanisms were different. Once set up, it could last forever. Moreover, it did not need to consume saint power or human resources, which was very convenient. At this point, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's faces turned pale, and they quickly scanned the surrounding environment. However, the place where they were was surrounded by light screens, and scenes after scenes appeared. Other than that, there were only two small wheels beside them. Creak, creak. The two small wheels kept turning, making a crisp sound. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun looked at it, but they did not dare to move. If the small wheels were not the mechanism to control the illusions, then they would be in trouble. Let's find out where the illusions of the few of them are. Looking at each other, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun quickly searched through the light screens in the sky. After searching for an hour, they finally found the images of Qing Yu, Toyota E, and the others. In the images, each of them was still deciphering the divine, well, heavenly saints' ruins, and they did not find anything wrong. Fortunately, they were not in any danger for the time being. Only Liu Yobo was slightly injured in his own illusions. Letting out a long sigh, Lin Yu was just about to swipe the light screen to see Qing Yu, but he realized that when he stared at the light screen, there was a sudden feeling in his mind, as if he could control the illusions. In an instant, Lin Ye's face turned solemn, and he fell into deep thought. Junior brother Lin, Shun Qingyun whispered, "Do you feel that the light screens of Little Crazy and the others are connected to us?" End of chapter. Chapter 646. We seem to be able to control those illusions. Lin Ye's eyes swiveled as he quickly scanned the screen. He wanted to see if he could control the illusions of a few of them, or the illusions of all of them. After a brief moment, Lin Ye's face grew increasingly solemn. He was shocked to discover that there were over 100 illusions that he could control within the screen. However, Lin Yi couldn't release all of them. Who knew what their identities were? The ruins were located in the divine spiritual mountain range, and ordinary people couldn't enter at all. If one wasn't a student of Cebu Gakuen, one wouldn't dare to enter without the strength of a peak great sage. Even heavenly saint powerhouses would have to be careful when entering the divine spiritual mountain range, and wouldn't dare to alarm Cebu Gakuen. This illusionary realm is terrifying. Shun Qingyun observed for a moment, and also saw through the trick. She couldn't help but say in a deep voice, "In my opinion, those that can still be controlled are those that haven't died. As for those that can't be controlled, their bodies have already died, and only their consciousnesses are still living in the illusionary realm." That's right. Lin Yi nodded his head and said, "Using the illusionary realm as a mechanism is truly terrifying." Wong. Suddenly, another ray of light appeared, and the imprint in the air landed between Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun, and two rays of white light entered their bodies. Boom! Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun felt a lot of memories enter their minds, causing them to feel an incomparable headache, and almost fell to their knees. After a moment, the memories were digested and immersed in Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's minds. As the pain disappeared, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. What entered their minds was knowledge regarding illusionary realms, including how to create them and how to turn them into mechanisms. Of course, there was also a way to break them. After all, this was a ruin and was left behind by Cebu Gakuen, so it wasn't very dangerous, and there was a way to survive. Of course, even if it was very dangerous, the people of Cebu Gakuen had the means to rescue the students. At the beginning of the illusion, whoever could break through would be able to obtain the reward left behind by the owner. Phew, it's already so exciting, Lin Yi said with a grin. Shun Qingyun's eyes lit up. It seems that there will be some fun in the ruins. All right, Let's save them first. With a thought, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun activated the imprint at the same time, adjusting the light screen of Feng Tianyi, Qing Yu, and the others. Bang, bang, bang. With a crisp sound, the curtain of light shattered. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked at each other and retracted their imprints. In the next moment, the endless curtain of light dissipated and the white fog disappeared without a trace. The two of them returned to their original location. To be precise, they didn't change their position just now. It was just a space constructed by the rich power of divine thoughts. After retreating, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked around. After discovering that nothing was different from before, they let out a sigh of relief. Qing Yu, Feng Tianyi, and the others on the ground woke up slowly. Ouch, my head hurts. That's strange. Aren't we exploring the ruins? Why are we here? Ouch, my leg hurts too. Why can't I get up? After waking up, Feng Tianyi and the others looked up and were stunned. Each of them felt pain all over their body. Qing Yu's face was solemn, and she had already guessed something. Senior sister, Shun, junior brother Lin, what's going on? Feng Tianyi frowned and said, how did we suddenly appear here? What's with the surrounding white fog? Although Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's imprints had dispelled much of the white fog, it was still thick. If they were a little further away, they would see a vast expanse of white, and they couldn't see through it. Haven't you realized it yet? Shen Qingyun shrugged and said helplessly, everything you experienced earlier was just an illusion. Now it's reality. All right, take a rest and recover your strength. With that, Shen Qingyun waved her right hand gently. Emerald green light rippled and fell on Feng Tianyi and the others, healing their injuries. Of course, Shen Qingyun could only heal their external injuries. As for the recovery of the power of divine thoughts, they had to rely on themselves. It was an illusion just now. It can't be, right? Feng Tianyi and the others were stunned. They looked at each other and were particularly confused. Soon, Feng Tianyi and Qing Yu smiled bitterly. In the illusion, they had also been suspicious. However, the ruins in the illusion had been affecting their minds, so they couldn't be sure. In the end, they ignored it. I didn't expect that it was really an illusion. Feng Tianyi looked up at Lin Yi curiously. He didn't have any doubts that Shen Qingyun could come out of the illusion first. After all, Shen Qingyun was extremely talented. Even in the inner yard, she was ranked among the top in terms of talent. However, Lin Yi was only at the middle stage of the Saint Realm, and his power of divine thoughts had completely collapsed. How could he come out of the illusion first? Could it be that senior sister Shen saved him first? Phew, no matter what, he must be extraordinary. I can't underestimate him. Feng Tianyi stopped thinking about it. He made a gesture to the others, and they all sat down cross-legged to adjust their breathing and divine thoughts. The heavenly saint relic was full of danger. They had to maintain their state at all times. Seeing Qing Yu, Feng Tianyi, and the others enter the state of adjustment, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked at each other and were surprised. After they left the illusion, no imprint appeared. It seems that the imprint can only be obtained by those who break out of the illusion with their own strength. Shen Qingyun's eyes twinkled. She suddenly smiled and said, I'm sure that the imprint is very important. Now that they haven't gotten it, maybe the most precious thing in the relic will be in your hands. Oh, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and chuckled. Didn't you get two? Why aren't you tempted? I don't major in the power of divine thoughts. What's the use of it? Shen Qingyun rolled her eyes and immediately smiled brightly. If there are sword skills, maybe I will fight for it. Then why are you still here? After being glanced at by Shen Qingyun and seeing her flower-like smile, Lin Ye's heart suddenly jumped. He quickly calmed down and turned to look elsewhere. Every heavenly saint relic has all sorts of unimaginable mechanisms or training methods. I want to train myself. Shen Qingyun suddenly said seriously, my path is not like yours. You don't major in divine thoughts or saint power. I have always been practicing the saber. Saber? Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi couldn't help but stare at Shen Qingyun, carefully sizing her up. After sizing her up, Lin Ye's face became more dignified. In his senses, the power in Shun Qingyun's body was extremely pure. Except for the sharpness of the saber, there was no other aura. In a chapter. Chapter 647. How is that possible? Lin Yi frowned slightly and stared at Shun Qingyun. Normally, everyone would comprehend several types of power to stabilize their own power. Although a single type of power was relatively pure and holy power was relatively powerful, when one's realm was high, the power would be too pure and would hurt one's body. Pure flames, without the suppression of other elements, were very likely to cause the cultivator to spontaneously combust. Pure sword intent, without other powers to protect the body, was very likely that the cultivator's internal organs would be pierced full of holes by the sharp sword aura. There are also people who tried to cultivate only one type of power, but the result was very tragic. Without exception, all of them died an unnatural death. They had not even cultivated to the saint realm and were only in the celestial realm. Their bodies could not withstand a single type of pure power. After discovering this, no one dared to cultivate only one type of power. They all focused on one type of power and used the rest to improve and protect their bodies. But now, there was only endless sword intent in Shun Qingyun's body, which surprised Lin Yi. Normally, Shun Qingyun would have exploded and died when she was in the celestial realm. How could she still cultivate to the invincible saint realm? I don't know why. Shun Qingyun sighed and said, "My body has been very strong since I was a child. My father met a strong person some time ago and found out that my body was abnormal. He said that I was born with a sore body and could not cultivate other skills or other powers. I could only walk the path of Theta Scarabii. At first, my father did not believe it and let me cultivate according to the normal method, but I could not attract the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. One day, I picked up a short sword by chance and embarked on the path of cultivation. From then on, there was only the sword in my world. Other than the sword, I could not comprehend any other power. There is such a constitution." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. Normally, there would not be such a restriction on the constitution. For example, although Shurtian had the flame imperial body, he could still absorb other elements except for flames. Otherwise, no matter how high his affinity with fire was, he would still be burned to death by the flames. Not to mention you, even the elders of Cebu Gakuen couldn't figure out anything about this kind of constitution. Shun Qingyun sighed. At first, I didn't dare to let others discover my abnormality. It was only after I came to the True Sky Billow Domain and entered Cebu Gakuen that I dare to speak of it. I hope that my physique can change soon. I don't want to be a weirdo." Speaking of this, Shun Qingyun's face was filled with disappointment. Lin Yi rolled his eyes and couldn't help but sigh. He finally understood why Shun Qingyun became a witch. She was different from ordinary people. She was afraid that others would be afraid, so she could only use this kind of method to fool around and divert other people's attention. Indeed, if anyone were to find out that someone's cultivation method was different from the rest of the world, they would definitely panic and fear. In other words, you don't have the power of divine thought, nor do you have the power of other domains. Lin Yi touched his nose and said softly, "Then why did I sense other powers earlier?" "That's because I used my saber will to disguise it." Shun Qingyun shrugged and said helplessly, "I once learned a technique that can use saber will to disguise other auras. In fact, I only have one type of domain, which is the pure saber domain. Now, I'm stuck at that step and can't take it. However, I have a feeling that after I merge with the nameless saber, I'll definitely be able to take that step. After the domain is the law. If you can comprehend the law of saber, your sharp power will reach a new level." Lin Yi nodded slightly and suddenly asked, "Oh, right, if you only cultivate the saber way, doesn't that mean that your saint power is filled with sharp saber will? How is your body able to withstand it?" "I don't know." Shun Qingyun waved her hand and said, "My physique has been very strong since I was young. Those saber wills can't hurt me. Can you let me feel that saber will?" After hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi still asked. Shun Xingyun's mind moved slightly, and in an instant, the air trembled violently. Puffed. Sharp saber chi surged wildly, bringing with it the sound of breaking the air. It floated in the air, causing the entire space to turn illusory. Puffed, puffed. Lin Yi bore the brunt of it. His skin could not withstand the violent power and cracked open, causing small amounts of blood to flow slowly. What a strong saber chi! Exclaiming, Lin Yi ignored the wounds on his body, and his expression was particularly solemn. The saber will just now was purer and sharper than that of an ordinary great sage intermediate stage expert. Even with Lin Ye's strong physique, it was shocking that it could crack open. No wonder you can defeat an intermediate great sage intermediate stage expert. Your saber will is too pure, even stronger than theirs. Lin Yi said excitedly. If your defense can keep up, you might be able to fight an intermediate great sage at the peak. No. Shun Xingyun shook her head and said, My physique can only withstand saber way attacks. No matter what realm the saber will, saber chi, or saber territory is, as long as it's related to the saber, it can't cause any harm to me. But if it's other forces, I can't resist. It's very difficult for me to fight an intermediate great sage, intermediate stage expert. If it's an advanced great sage, intermediate stage expert, I can't do anything unless I use a supreme sacred artifact to protect myself and kill him in a short time. So that's how it is. Touching his nose, Lin Yi was quite surprised. It was the first time he met someone with such a physique. She can ignore all saber-related forces. This physique is really too strong. After a while, Lin Yi could only shake his head and sigh in admiration, but he couldn't find anything else. Even when he asked Biluo for help, Lin Yi couldn't get an answer. In my opinion, your physique doesn't belong to this continent. After a long time, Lin Yi patted Shun Xingyun's shoulder and whispered, But this is also good. At least you can get a strong force to protect yourself. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about this. You don't have to worry. Whether the path of cultivation is different or not, as long as you can control that force, it's fine. You don't have to care about what others think when you're strong. Shun Xingyun blinked when she heard that. She stared at Lin Yi closely as her eyes shone brighter and brighter. In the future, if I come across something good related to sabers, I'll definitely leave some for you. Lin Yi smiled and said, Then this time, I'll kindly accept it. It's good that you remember. Shun Xingyun tilted her head slightly and looked at Lin Yi with a strange light in her eyes. End of chapter. Chapter 648. Time passed bit by bit. After Lin Yi and Shun Xingyun finished talking about their physiques, they stood guard for Feng Tianyi and the rest. Soon, 2 hours had passed. Qingyu and Feng Tianyi had finished their cultivation. Looking at Lin Yi and Shun Xingyun, Qingyu and Feng Tianyi were stunned for a moment. A strange feeling arose in their hearts. Another 2 hours later, Feng Tianyi and the rest had finished their cultivation. Everyone had recovered to their peak state. They were full of energy. Therefore, everyone set off and rushed into the depths of the white mist. On the way, Shun Xingyun and the rest talked about the illusion. When the crowd found out that it was Lin Yi who had rescued them, their expressions immediately changed. They thought they were stronger than Lin Yi. They did not expect that they would be trapped as soon as they entered the ruin. It was all thanks to Lin Yi that they could get out of the illusion. As they went deeper, the white mist became thicker. Lin Yi and Shun Xingyun both called out their marks to disperse the white mist. Patter, patter. At the same time, the sound of footsteps echoed in their ears. Everyone sensed that something was wrong. Originally, they seemed to be walking on an open plain. However, as they walked, they seemed to have walked into a small alley. Even the sound of their footsteps could not be stopped. Noticing this, Lin Yi and the rest immediately slowed down and looked around. The power of divine thought rippled out and intertwined into a divine thought net to protect everyone. Moving forward slowly, Shun Xingyun took the lead with a long saber in her hand. The sharp saber, Qi, soared to the sky and opened up a path in front. Seeing this, Feng Tianyi and the rest shook their heads. They were amazed by Shun Qingyun. Cough, cough. After walking forward for a while, a soft coughing sound suddenly sounded beside the ears of Lin Yi and the others. What's that sound? Raising their eyebrows, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the rest raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. However, what entered his eyes was a vast expanse of whiteness. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun looked at each other. Then, they immediately changed their direction and rushed towards the source of the sound. The mark flickered and emitted a silver-white radiance, slowly dispersing the white fog. Cough, cough. The light coughing sound became louder and louder. Soon, a figure lying on the ground appeared in everyone's line of sight. There's someone there. Feng Toyota and the others were shocked. They didn't go over directly, but looked carefully. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun were also staring at that figure. From what they could sense, that person's life force was extremely weak, like an old man with one foot in the grave. That's not right. How could there be people in the ruins? I've been here several times, but I didn't see anyone. Feng Tianyi furrowed his brows and whispered, "Be careful. There's definitely something strange about this guy." Lin Yi nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, "Let's go together and see what's going on." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi and the others approached the figure together. However, their speed was rather slow. As they got closer, Lin Yi and the others could see the person clearly. It was a woman. Although her figure wasn't very good, it was still curvaceous. Although her cheeks were stained with dust, they were still very pretty. Of course, compared to Shun Qingyun and Qingwei, she was still lacking. Compared to ordinary people, she was already very beautiful. Coupled with her haggard appearance, Feng Toyota and the others' hearts suddenly trembled. That's strange. Why would a woman appear in the ruins? Could it be that the people who have explored the ruins in the past are trapped here? Feng Toyota and the others frowned slightly and were surprised. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun were also suspicious. No one knew how many people had entered the ruins. In particular, the two of them had seen countless people trapped in the illusion. They couldn't be sure if someone had broken out of the illusion and continued to explore it. If the woman broke out of the illusion and was lost in the white fog, it would be too cruel for them to leave her in the lurch. Perhaps they could get some information about the ruins from the woman. Woo! As if sensing the arrival of Lin Yi and the others, the woman raised her eyes and revealed a look of ecstasy. She opened her mouth slightly and made a sound. The hopeful look on her face became more and more obvious. She looked at Lin Yi and the others like a person who had been thirsty for a long time and saw water. Seeing this scene, Feng Toyota and the others were moved. They couldn't bear to see her like this and immediately walked towards her. "Hey, little madman, what are you doing?" Shun Qingyun exclaimed. She was about to pull Feng Toyota and the others, but was stopped by Lin Yi. Frowning slightly, Shun Qingyun saw Lin Yi's dignified look and stopped pulling Feng Toyota and the others. She just stared at them with sparkling eyes. Obviously, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and Qingwei all noticed that something was wrong with the woman. The white fog was particularly suspicious. It couldn't be dispersed and could block people's senses. If it weren't for Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's mark, they would have suffocated. The woman, who knew how long she had persisted in the white fog and survived. It was unbelievable. "Miss, what's wrong with you?" Feng Toyota and the others leaned forward and quickly reached out to help the girl. However, when they helped the girl up, they were shocked to find that it wasn't her legs under her skirt, but something disgusting like blood. Ah! Seeing this, Feng Toyota and the others screamed and quickly retreated. However, the woman beside them had already transformed into a bloody and sticky giant beast. She opened her huge mouth and revealed her sharp teeth as she bit towards them. "You're courting death." Lin Yi's face turned cold. The blazing flame appeared in his hand, and he swung it. The sharp sword chi broke through the air and slashed at the sticky mouth. Buzz! However, the sword chi didn't cause any damage to the giant beast. It went straight through and disappeared into the depths of the white fog. What's going on? Seeing this, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and Qingwei were stunned. They opened their mouths and stared at the sticky giant beast. Roar! The giant viscous beast roared. Its two dull gray eyes glanced at Lin Yi and the other two. Then it opened its huge mouth again and tried to swallow Feng Tianyi and the others. It was as if it wanted to swallow them in one gulp. That's right, this is the relic left behind by the divine Heaven Saint. Lin Yi suddenly thought of this and hurriedly shouted, Feng Tianyi, hurry up and use your spiritual sense. Hearing Lin Yi's shout, Feng Toyota and the others came to their senses. They were divine saints. Why should they be afraid? Feng Toyota and the others formed a seal with their hands. The moment they retreated, surging divine power mixed with violent power rushed toward the disgusting, sticky giant beast. End of chapter. Chapter 649. Boom, boom, boom. The power of divine telekinesis collided with the viscous behemoth's body and instantly exploded with a huge force, sending the viscous behemoth flying. Roar! After tumbling for a while, the viscous giant beast got up again and looked at Lin Yi and the rest ferociously. Damn it! How dare you tempt us? After Feng Tianyi realized the strength of the giant beast, he was no longer afraid. With a gloomy face, he stepped forward and chopped with his right hand. Wong! The formless power of divine sense bloomed like a sharp knife, instantly cutting off the head of the viscous giant beast. Plop! The head fell to the ground. The body of the giant beast shook for a moment and exploded with a boom, turning into divine telekinesis that filled the sky. Noticing this, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the rest were surprised. Such a disgusting thing was actually condensed from divine telekinesis? Impossible. Divine telekinesis is mostly invisible. According to legend, only a few people can concretize divine telekinesis. However, their concretization is only condensed into various shapes. Feng Tianyi and the rest looked at each other in shock. Lin Yu was also shocked. He originally thought that Chun Daoshuan's ability to condense divine telekinesis into the shape of all things in the world was already terrifying. However, the owner of this ruin taught him another lesson. Condensing divine telekinesis into a person and turning it into a puddle of disgusting things so vividly. This kind of realm had already surpassed their understanding. Lin Yi suddenly had a thought. Was this ruin really left behind by a heavenly saint powerhouse? This kind of method could only be done by powerhouses who surpassed the heavenly saint realm. The giant beast collapsed. Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and Qingyu immediately fixed their eyes on Feng Tianyi and the rest. Sensing Lin Yi and the rest's gaze, Feng Tianyi and the rest could not help but feel awkward. If they hadn't stepped forward just now, the sticky giant beast probably wouldn't have attacked them. I sense it just now, Qingyu suddenly said. In the beginning, it didn't have the ability to move. It was only after coming into contact with you and absorbing the power in your bodies that it transformed into other forms and was able to move. In other words, as long as we don't touch it, it won't turn into a disgusting beast. Phew! In that case, if we encounter such a situation again, we'll just avoid it. Toyota, he said with a wry smile. Sorry, I've caused trouble for everyone. Avoid? Why are you avoiding it? Lin Yi suddenly asked. In an instant, Shun Qingyun, Qingyu, Feng Tianyi, and the others all looked at Lin Yi in confusion. They were here to explore the ruins and obtain treasures. They could not afford to waste time. Sensing everyone's surprise, Lin Yi smiled and raised his head. He pointed to the sky and said in a low voice, Look, the divine sense aura hasn't dissipated yet. It's condensed in the air. In my opinion, this divine consciousness aura is our reward for defeating the giant beast. Hearing this, Toyota and the others frowned and suddenly said, You mean these divine consciousness aura can be absorbed? Yes. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi took a step forward and immediately guided some of the divine consciousness aura into his body. Seeing this, Toyota, Qingyu, and the others suddenly became very nervous and stared at Lin Yi. Only Shen Qingyun was full of confidence in Lin Yi. She knew that he would never do something that he was not confident in, so she was not worried. However, Shen Qingyun did not know that this time Lin Yi was really going for it. Seeing the divine consciousness aura dissipating, Lin Yi subconsciously wanted to absorb it. That was why he made such a decision. Almost at the moment when the divine consciousness aura entered Lin Yi's body, his body bloomed with a silvery white light. In the next moment, a holy aura filled the air and restored Lin Yi's divine consciousness power. Feeling this, Lin Yi could not help but be overjoyed. These auras allowed him to recover a lot of soul power and divine consciousness power. The effect was not inferior to the sacred elixir. Inhaling a breath of cold air, Lin Yi opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, "The effect of these divine consciousness auras is not inferior to the sacred elixir. Try and see if you can absorb it." As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Yu, Toyota E, and the others did not hesitate and immediately guided the divine consciousness aura in the air into their bodies. In the next moment, their bodies also bloomed with a bright light. Shen Qingyun looked at this scene and pouted. She looked at Lin Yi in confusion. "Your soul power and divine consciousness have not recovered yet. Why don't you absorb more?" We are a team after all. These things must be divided equally." Lin Yi shrugged and said with a smile, "Moreover, we have just entered the ruins. In my opinion, there are many good things inside. I don't have to rush it all. If I take too much now, what will I do in the future?" Shen Qingyun glanced at Lin Yi, covered her mouth, and laughed. "You are so scheming." "This is not scheming." Lin Yi coughed softly and immediately signaled Shen Qingyun to stop talking. Boom, boom, boom. A few auras burst out. Qin Yu, Toyota E, and the others were all shocked and exclaimed, "Hiss!" The enhancement of these divine consciousness auras seems to be even stronger than the sacred elixir. "That's right." Lin Yi grinned and said, "That's why I said that not only can we not avoid them, but we also have to take the initiative to look for them. Phew, let's not talk about it anymore. If I can encounter 20 of these things, I think I can break through to the next level." Fang Yuanpeng said excitedly, "The Heavenly Saint ruins are indeed powerful. There are actually such good treasures." But everyone must be careful." Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "Just now, you must have been charmed. That's why you went forward and came into contact with them. With their power, I think other than temptation, they have other means, so everyone must not let their guard down. Also, they are not afraid of sword qi, so they probably won't be afraid of other powers. Everyone, use your divine consciousness power to attack them." Okay, Toyota, E, and the others agreed. Originally, they were not convinced by Lin Yi. They admired him only because he dared to be with Shen Qingyun, that witch. But now, Lin Yi was the first to discover that something was wrong with the divine consciousness auras. He also analyzed the weaknesses and abilities of those sticky giant beasts. Naturally, they would believe in Lin Yi. After making up their minds, Lin Yi and the others no longer walked in a straight line. Instead, they spread out, not wanting to miss any corner as they searched for the traces of those sticky giant beasts. Hard work pays off. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, another soft voice sounded out. When they got closer, it was indeed another woman. She wore a long dress and was lying on the ground. She looked so pitiful that it made one's heart ache. One could not help but want to help them. End of chapter. Chapter 650. In the vast white fog, Lin Yi and the rest strolled around, looking for traces of the giant sticky beasts. In this day, they encountered a total of 17 giant sticky beasts. After killing them, one of them directly broke through from level 55 to level 56. The rest of them had completely stabilized their divine senses. Lin Yi had also gained a lot, recovering his divine sense to level 34. One should know that the recovery of divine sense was far more difficult than the improvement. Lin Yi could recover so quickly, which showed the strength of the divine sense aura. Phew! It's been an hour, and we still haven't found them. I guess there's nothing left? After strolling for a while, Feng Toi wiped the sweat off his forehead, feeling depressed. At this moment, he was only one step away from breaking through to level 57. However, he could no longer find those giant sticky beasts. There should be more, Lin Yi said in a low voice. The giant sticky beasts we encounter are getting stronger. I think they should have their own territory. As long as we continue to search, we'll definitely find something. In the beginning, the giant sticky beasts that Lin Yi and the rest encountered were at most level 50. Feng Toi and the rest could easily kill them. However, later on, the giant sticky beasts they encountered became stronger. Even if Feng Toi and the rest joined forces, it was still difficult to deal with them. After fighting with the giant sticky beasts many times, they also summed up the giant sticky beasts' abilities and weaknesses. Those giant sticky beasts not only had the ability to charm people, but they could also teleport and instantly change into a person's figure. In the beginning, Lin Yi and the rest did not stop, and one of them was seriously injured. Just as they had guessed, those giant beasts were not afraid of anything other than the power of divine sense. Hence, no matter how strong Shen Qingyun was, she could only be a bystander. She could only watch silently from the sidelines as Lin Yi and the others made their move. However, Lin Yi's divine sense had not recovered. In the end, it was still Feng Toi, Qin Yu, and the rest who were fighting. Cough, cough. Suddenly, another coughing sound was heard. Lin Yi and the rest were delighted. They quickly sped up and rushed in the direction of the sound. However, a moment later, when they got closer, their expressions turned grave. Not far away, there were 6 figures lying on the ground. The life auras of each of the 6 figures were much stronger than those they had encountered before. Hiss! Seeing this scene, Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the others couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They were quite shocked in their hearts. Looking at each other, Lin Yi and the others were stunned. Would they be able to defeat these giant sticky beasts that had gathered together? Kikik. Just as Lin Yi and the others were in a daze, a sinister laugh suddenly rang out. In a split second, a cold wind blew. Lin Yi, Tota Yi, and the others suddenly felt a chill run down their backs, as if they were in an ice cellar, shivering. When he raised his head, he saw that the 6 figures had actually stood up on their own. Bright red blood flowed, turning them into bloody figures. Hiss! What is this? Mutated. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi, Toyota Yi, and the others were shocked beyond words. Amidst the crisp sound, a pair of blood-red wings unfurled from the backs of the 6 women. Their clothes were tattered and stained with blood as they floated in the air, staring ferociously at Lin Yi and the others. Their teeth were as sharp as an animal's, incomparably sharp and gleaming with a cold light. Their 10 fingers were slender, and their nails were as sharp as knives, chilling one's heart. This gulp, the sound of saliva being swallowed, continuously rang out. Lin Yi, Tota Yi, and the others staggered back a few steps. Why didn't they turn into giant beasts? Or are they in human form? Toyota Yi and the others frowned, their hearts filled with worry. Huff! Their strength must be stronger than the previous giant beasts. Lin Yi's expression was solemn. Kikik! The sinister laughter rang out again. In the next moment, the 6 blood women flapped their wings, waved their sharp fingers, and attacked Lin Yi and the others. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wind whistled, and Lin Yi and the others hurriedly retreated. Ha! Divine telekinesis net. Toyota Yi and the others formed a seal with their hands, and the power of their divine telekinesis exploded, intertwining into a giant net, blocking the 6 blood women. Poof! However, the 6 blood women merely waved their claws, and the divine telekinesis net shattered and dissipated before everyone's eyes. Oh no, their strength seems to have reached level 56 divine telekinesis. Toyota Yi's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly shouted, "We must separate them. The power they can unleash when gathered together is too great." All right. As soon as he finished speaking, Toyota E, Qing Yu, and the others immediately leaped and separated the 6 blood women. Among them, 2 were only level 55 divine telekinesis saints. They were no match for the blood women in a one-on-one fight, so they had to work together. Even so, they could only barely block the blood women and could not launch an effective counterattack. Not far away, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun looked anxious. They could only watch Toyota E and the others fight the blood women. One of them did not cultivate his divine telekinesis, while the other's divine telekinesis was shattered, so they could not attack. Phew! Looks like the situation is not good. After carefully observing for a moment, Lin Ye's expression was extremely grave. Other than Toyota E and Qing Yu, the others seemed to be no match for the blood women. Once they are defeated, the blood women will surround Qing Yu and Toyota E, and we will be finished. D*imminent. How can they transform into other forms? Shen Qingyun frowned slightly. Originally, they thought that they were all in the form of giant beasts. Even if they were powerful, they would not be afraid. After all, the giant beasts were too slow and had too many restrictions. It would be rather easy to destroy them. Now, however, they were feeling gloomy. Although the blood women were not much stronger than the giant beasts, their movements were extremely fast, and their claws were sharp. No one dared to fight them head-on. Bang, 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 bang. Divine telekinesis collided continuously. In the intense battle, Toyota E and the others were quickly injured, and they were covered in blood. Roar! After sensing the aura of fresh blood, the blood women became even more frenzied. The aura in their bodies was extremely overbearing. In this way, the few of them who were already at a disadvantage could no longer hold on. Bang! In the crisp sound, the few figures were immediately sent flying by the blood women. Their bodies were twitching nonstop. Hiss! Lin Yi frowned slightly, and he was even more terrified. This ruin was too powerful. He found it hard to believe that such powerful blood women were condensed from divine telekinesis. Hee hee hee. Sinister laughter sounded again. After the 3 blood women finished off their opponents, they did not surround Qing Yu and Toyota E. Instead, they turned to Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun with ferocious expressions. Screech! Flapping their wings, the 3 blood women immediately waved their sharp claws and attacked Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun at lightning speed. End of chapter. Chapter 651. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Oh no! Sensing that terrifying attack, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly retreated. Swoosh! However, the 2 blood ladies were extremely fast. In just a few breaths, they were in front of Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun. Their hideous grins made Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's heart skip a beat. In the next moment, the sharp claws were right in front of them. Ah! Shun Qingyun screamed and grabbed Lin Yi's shoulder tightly. Lin Yi quickly took out the Tianhun jade pendant and injected his saint power into it. Buzz! In an instant, a yellow light screen appeared and blocked Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun. Bang! Bang! The sharp claws slammed against the earthy yellow light screen. Immediately, a loud sound was heard, and the light screen shook violently. Roar! The blood ladies roared and swung their claws at the light screen. At the same time, several sharp bone spikes popped out from their bodies and stabbed the light screen. Dong! 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 In an instant, the light screen trembled violently, and fine cracks appeared on it one after another. Damn it! I can't hold them off anymore. Lin Yi frowned and took out the sky-devouring mirror again. He looked at the 2 blood ladies with cold eyes. If even the sky-devouring mirror could not deal with them, they could only fight. Shun Qingyun held Lin Ye's arm tightly. She bit her lips and took a step forward. She did not want to be a burden to others. With a thought, a long saber appeared in Shun Qingyun's hand. Her eyes were cold as she stared at the 2 blood maidens. Senior Sister Shun, don't be rash. Seeing this, Lin Yi was shocked. You can only use your divine thought to deal with them. You can't do any harm to them. Gritting his teeth, Lin Yu was about to grab Shen Qingyun when a clear voice sounded. The light screen of the Tianhun jade pendant exploded. The two blood ladies rushed toward Shen Qingyun. It waved its sharp claws, creating a series of afterimages. Lin Yu's expression changed. However, Shen Qingyun had already dashed out. The moment the light screen shattered. Ah, harmless saber. As soon as his piercingly cold shout resounded, saber energy shot out horizontally and vertically, and it instantly pierced through the bodies of the blood-red women. Swoosh! SWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSWSWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSWSW. SW. SWSWSWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSW. What? SWSWSWSWSWSWSW. Seeing this scene, Lin Yu was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Not to mention Lin Yi. Even Shen Qingyun was stunned. What's going on? My ordinary attacks couldn't hurt them. Why can I hurt them now? Could it be that these blood ladies are different from the giant beasts? Lin Yi rolled his eyes and looked at the two people who were about to be defeated not far away. He immediately jumped up, and a bright flame appeared. He raised his hand, and a sharp sword chi broke through the air. Sword chi 30,000 miles. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sword territory appeared. In an instant, countless sword chi whizzed toward him and formed a huge sword. Swoosh! He brandished the huge sword, and the sword chi dashed toward the remaining four blood ladies. Buzz, buzz, buzz. However, the sword chi didn't do any harm to the blood ladies. It didn't even pierce through their bodies. It just went through their bodies as if they were illusions. What's going on? The corners of Lin Ye's mouth twitched violently. He was surprised. He withdrew his blazing flames and turned to look at Shen Qingyun. Lin Ye had already understood that it wasn't that the blood women's nature had changed. They were still immune to the rest of the spiritual force attacks. However, Shen Qingyun's power was too pure. That pure saber power didn't belong to this world. Perhaps it had a special effect that could hurt the blood ladies. What's going on? Shen Qingyun frowned and was stunned. She looked at Lin Yi in a daze. Nothing, Lin Yi said in a low voice. Senior Sister Shun, since you can hurt the blood ladies, hurry up and do it. If you don't do it now, I'm afraid the others will be hurt. In the air, other than Qing Yu and Feng Tianyi who were still able to endure, the other two were trembling all over and their limbs were powerless. If they did not know that defeat meant death and still clenched their teeth and persisted, it was likely that they would have been defeated long ago. All right, Shen Qingyun glanced around and knew that this wasn't the time to think about other things. As long as she could hurt the blood ladies, she would do it first. Dazzling Sky Saber. After taking a deep breath, Shen Qingyun leaped up and spun the long saber in her hand. In an instant, illusions appeared one after another. Dozens of long sabers flickered with cold light and enveloped Shen Qingyun. Buzz, buzz. The sharp saber chi wreaked havoc and whistled incessantly. Feeling the violent power of the saber chi, even a few people who were in the middle of fighting were shocked. When they turned around, Feng Tianyi and the others were surprised. They looked bitter and helpless. Senior Sister Shun, why are you still doing it at this time? Sigh. Feng Tianyi and the others were depressed and despaired. They didn't see how Shen Qingyun cut the two blood ladies in half. Therefore, they thought that Shen Qingyun couldn't hurt the blood ladies. Under such circumstances, Shen Qingyun's move wouldn't hurt the blood ladies, but it would hinder them. However, just as they were feeling depressed, saber shadows filled the sky. Among the dozens of long sabers, countless saber chi, saber shadows, and saber bodies formed by piercing saber intent danced wildly like a fountain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The wind whistled, and the saber chi wreaked havoc, instantly penetrating the bodies of the four blood ladies. Ah, ah! Amid the shrill screams, The four blood ladies were cut into pieces by the saber chi before they could react. Me? What's going on? Seeing this, Feng Tianyi, Qing Yu, and the others were stunned. They had tried before, but ordinary attacks were useless against the blood ladies and the giant beasts. Why was Shun Qingyun able to cut them into pieces as soon as she attacked? In an instant, Feng Tianyi and the others swallowed their saliva. They looked at Shun Qingyun with eyes full of shock. Senior Sister Shun, you're really too powerful. After a long time, Feng Tianyi sighed. They always knew that Shun Qingyun was powerful, but they didn't expect Shun Qingyun's saber intent to be so terrifying. She could even cut such a strange existence into two. No, not too far away. Lin Ye's expression was extremely heavy when he saw the 6 blood women had been shattered into two and were twitching on the ground. In a chapter. Chapter 652. Something's not right. Lin Yi shouted. These blood ladies are not dead yet. Something's wrong. Hearing Lin Ye's words, Toyota, Yi, Qing Wei, and the others were surprised. Junior brother Lin. Toyota Yi frowned and said, these blood ladies have been split in half. Why is it still not right? They're not dead yet. They haven't turned into divine consciousness aura. Lin Ye's face was solemn. His eyes were cold as he stared at the blood ladies that had been split in half. Hearing this, Toyota, Yi, and the others looked at each other and said, could it be that they're not the same thing, so they won't turn into divine consciousness aura after death? How is that possible? Lin Yi shook his head and said, don't forget, they're all seducing people in the form of young girls. In my opinion, these blood ladies are of a higher level. If they're dead, their divine consciousness aura should be stronger. Why isn't there any divine consciousness aura? So, they're definitely not dead yet. Speaking of this, Toyota, Yi, and the others were shocked. Shun Qingyun also said, little crazy, try attacking them with your divine consciousness again. Okay. Toyota, Yi nodded slightly. With a thought, surging divine consciousness power whizzed out like a storm and slammed violently on the blood ladies on the ground. Roar! Almost at the moment when the divine consciousness power was about to fall, the blood ladies that had been split apart on the ground let out a shrill roar. The next moment, their bodies suddenly collapsed and turned into puddles of blood. Gulp! Gulp! As soon as they turned into blood, they gathered together at an extremely fast speed and turned into a huge puddle of thick blood. What? Their pupils contracted violently. Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others quickly retreated. Looking at the thick puddle of blood, they couldn't help but vomit. A fishy smell wafted out from it. What's going on? D*M*, they're not dead. Toyota, Yi, and the others' faces changed drastically. They frowned and stared at the thick puddle of blood. Kikik. The sinister laughter rang out once again. The blood that was so thick that it was close to flesh and blood suddenly extended 4 limbs and a head. Hiss, how disgusting. Seeing this scene, Shun Qingyun and Qing Wei both turned their heads away, their throats feeling extremely uncomfortable. Even Lin Yi, Toyota Yi, and the others felt their mouths twitch and their stomachs churn. However, the lump of flesh quickly turned into a young girl. Blood flowed all over her body, and there were 3 pairs of huge blood-red wings on her back. She looked quite terrifying. The blood woman's form was exactly the same as before. However, her body was more than 10 times larger than before. The blood woman, who was originally the size of a human, was now dozens of feet tall. Her sharp teeth and ferocious smile were extremely shocking. He became a giant just like that. The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Roar! Miserable screams rang out. Blood Woman raised her right hand, and in an instant, blood filled the sky. It whistled over and suddenly enveloped them. Oh no! Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others' expressions changed slightly, and they hurriedly flew up. Toyota, Yi and the others rushed in front of their injured brothers and pulled them up into the air. Gulp, gulp, blood flowed. In just a dozen breaths, the blood had already reached a height of several meters like a lake. Then, the blood boiled, and smoke slowly rose one after another. There was originally endless white fog here, and with the addition of the smoke, the visibility in the air became increasingly poor. Lin Yi and the others could only vaguely see the figure of the blood woman. Fortunately, it had become bigger. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to see it clearly. Phew, 6 blood women have gathered together. They're a little strong. We have to be careful. But now, Toda, Yi, and the others carried an injured person in each hand and couldn't help but feel depressed. We don't have enough people. Now, we can only rely on you. In an instant, Toyota, Yi, and the others turned their attention to Lin Yi and Qin Yu. At this moment, they already understood that Shun Qinyun could indeed injure the blood women, but he couldn't directly kill them. If something went wrong, it would be over. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi looked at the sky-devouring mirror in his hand and took out the heavenly soul jade pendant again. Qin Yu's expression was also grave, and she was not confident. To be honest, it was already difficult for her to win against ordinary blood women. Now that she was facing such a huge blood woman, what could she do? No need. Leave this blood woman to me. Shen Qinyun bit his lip and said, I'll cut it into pieces again and leave it to you. As soon as he finished speaking, Shun Qinyun held a long saber and charged out again. Dazzling saber. As Shen Qinyun shouted coldly, countless sabers condensed around him again and shot at the blood woman continuously. At the same time, Shun Qinyun waved his long saber and slashed at the blood woman with sharp saber aura. Roar! Blood Maiden's 3 pairs of wings flapped, and in an instant, her body flew to the side like an illusion, dodging the countless blades. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the next moment, hundreds of piercingly cold, blood-red sharp claws appeared and suddenly attacked Shen Qinyun. Boom! Saber Qi whistled through the air. Before those blood-red claws could land, they had already been chopped into pieces. Roar! In an instant, the blood woman let out a shrill scream. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the boiling blood water exploded. Dozens of blood-red liquids sprayed out like a fountain and crashed towards Shun Qinyun. Saber dance. Saber light poured down. In the blink of an eye, the blood-red fountain was slashed into pieces, and it transformed into blood energy that covered the sky. It mixed with white mist and suddenly covered the entire sky. The blood woman flapped her wings again when she saw this scene, and her figure was completely submerged into the blood energy and white mist. She couldn't be seen clearly. Shit! Shen Qinyun frowned slightly when she noticed this, and she couldn't help but gnash her teeth. That thing's combat intelligence is shockingly high. According to their understanding, those blood women were clearly formed from the energy of divine perception, and they should be inanimate objects without intelligence. However, Blood Maiden's combat intelligence caused them to tremble with fear. Even an ordinary person might not possess such natural talent. Everyone, be careful. Lin Ye's heartbeat suddenly sped up, and he was extremely nervous as he hurriedly warned them. Swish! Swish! Almost as soon as Lin Ye's voice fell, the boiling blood qi below them turned into several sharp arrows of blood qi, and with lightning speed, they fiercely pierced towards Lin Yi and the others. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 653. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The blood-red arrows were extremely sharp and pierced through the air toward Lin Yi and the rest. Oh no! Feeling the sharp attack, Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. She quickly raised her hand, and the whistling divine thought power immediately turned into an invisible light screen to protect everyone. Bang, bang, bang. However, the divine thought light screen was as though it was nothing under the attack of the blood-red arrows. It was almost instantly penetrated. Poof! The divine thought light screen collapsed, and Qin Yu's mind was affected. Her body trembled and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Her face was pale, and her body was on the verge of collapsing. Seeing this, Lin Yi took a step forward and hurriedly supported Qingyu. Looking at the blood-colored arrows that were charging over, his expression was extremely solemn. D***M, everyone, let's do it together. Feeling the sharp aura, Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest were extremely shocked. Even though they were injured, they each mobilized their divine thought power. In the face of death, being injured was not worth mentioning. Leave it to me. Lin Yi stepped forward and held the devouring heaven mirror in one hand. He poured all the saint energy in his body into it. With the injection of saint energy, the devouring heaven mirror suddenly released a milky white light screen. It flickered with lightning and suddenly enveloped Lin Yi and the rest. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the blood-red arrows whizzed over and suddenly collided with the milky white light screen in front of everyone's horrified eyes. However, to everyone's surprise, when the blood-red arrows collided with the light screen, there was no explosion. Instead, a milky white light bloomed and stimulated everyone's eyes. A moment later, when everyone opened their eyes again, they saw that the blood-colored arrows that filled the sky had already entered the light curtain. What's going on? Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest were stunned as they stared blankly at Lin Yi. Those blood-red arrows earlier were extremely sharp. Even they were not confident that they would be able to withstand it. However, Lin Yi easily neutralized their attacks, which shocked them. At this time, Shun Qingyun, who was brandishing her saber qi in the air, also felt that something was wrong. She quickly descended, glanced at Lin Yi and the others, and suddenly shouted. In an instant, the biting cold saber qi danced and condensed into a circular saber shield, protecting Lin Yi and the others. That guy's a little cunning. Wait for me to kill it, then get ready to attack. With a shout, Shun Qingyun leaped up again. Saber qi whistled in the air, and saber shadows covered the sky as they fell. They're both invincible saints, but senior sister Shun is really strong. Seeing this, Toyota sighed. He was also an invincible saint and a level 57 divine sense expert. However, he was still powerless against Shin Qingyun. He was no match for her. Lin Yi was also surprised. He did not expect Shin Qingyun to be so powerful when she unleashed her full strength. Feeling the protection of the sharp saber qi, Lin Yi also calmed down. His eyes flashed as he looked at the Blood Lady. Under their feet, blood-red arrows kept flying out. However, before they could get close to Lin Yi and the others, they were cut in half by the sharp saber qi. For a moment, they were safe. Looking up at the sky, they could vaguely see Shun Qingyun waving the saber qi all over the sky and constantly colliding with a figure. Strong shock waves kept spreading out. Roar! Blood surged, and the white mist that filled the sky had a blood-red glow. Immediately, it turned into a giant beast. Roar! The giant beast roared at the sky, waved its claws, and slammed into the air. The violent power caused the entire space to tremble. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi and the others could not help but be surprised. The Blood Lady had too many tricks up her sleeve. She was too terrifying. As a result, they did not dare to believe that it was an existence formed by divine sense. Lin Yi and the others stared at the sky, feeling very worried. If by any chance Shin Qingyun was defeated, they would be finished. Based on the current situation, the Blood Lady had many tricks up her sleeve and was very powerful. They were no match for her at all, unless they could recover to their peak state and still have the strength to fight. No, we can't watch like this anymore. After a long while, Feng Tian, Yi, and the other injured disciples gritted their teeth and sat cross-legged in the sky to recover their divine sense power. Lin Yi, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others were still staring nervously at the sky. One by one, the blood-colored giants appeared and began to frantically slap the air. Among the blood-red giants and the Blood Lady, Shun Qingyun was like a long saber. She was fearless and kept colliding with them. The entire space kept trembling, resulting in a shockwave. A moment later, a sharp saber aura soared into the sky and exploded in a spiral, instantly tearing a few blood-red giants into pieces. The battle became more intense. The blood-red giants, the surging sea of blood, the blood-red arrows, the blood-red explosions, and the attacks that Lin Yi and the others could not see kept colliding with Shen Qingyan. Lin Yi and the others could only wait for the battle to end in silence. An hour later in the sky, a burst of bright, icy blue light suddenly burst out. A strong saber aura spread in all directions. This is senior sister Shun's strongest attack. Feng Tian clenched his fists in excitement when he sensed the sharp saber aura spreading in the air. It's that powerful. Lin Yi frowned. He could not help but be surprised. Roar! A dragon's roar suddenly sounded. The sharp saber aura turned into a huge, icy blue dragon. Roar, roar, roar. The huge, icy blue dragon roared and circled in the sky. It immediately lunged at the Blood Lady. Innocuous saber. The saber strikes innocuously. As the cold shout sounded, the violent saber aura madly gathered. In the blink of an eye, it had sealed the entire space. For a moment, Shen Qingyun, the Blood Lady, and the many blood-red giants were trapped together. Buzz! In the next moment, the violent saber aura stirred violently, causing the entire space to tremble. A bright blue light and an ear-piercing dragon's roar filled the entire space. Even Lin Yi could not help but close his eyes. The dragon's roar and the violent saber aura lasted for more than 30 breaths before it ended. For a moment, the world was silent. Whether it was the tiger's roar of the saber aura or the sound of boiling blood, all of it disappeared. Only the rapid breathing of Lin Yi and the others could be heard. Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes. When he looked up, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that the blood fog and white fog in the sky had disappeared without a trace. The sea of blood on the ground had also disappeared. Only 2 figures were left. One of them was covered in blood. The 3 pairs of blood-red wings on his back were on the verge of falling. The other figure was surrounded by several sharp sabers. A biting cold aura soared into the sky. End of chapter. Chapter 654. Gasp so powerful. Seeing this, Toyota, Qingyu, and the rest were stunned and could not help but gasp. They did not think that Shen Qingyun's strength was actually so formidable. Kacha! Kacha! A crisp sound was heard. In the next moment, the Blood Lady in the sky shattered and turned into countless blood-red blood that scattered on the ground. Noticing this, Shen Qingyun sighed softly. The blades on her body dissipated, and she quickly landed beside Lin Yi. Her face was pale, and she looked haggard. Seeing Shen Qingyun's complexion, Lin Yi's heart ached, and he quickly held Shen Qingyun. Senior sister Shen, are you all right? Toyota, and the rest quickly asked. As for the Blood Lady, they did not care about it anymore. I'm fine. I just used too much strength, Shen Qingyun said bitterly. I used the innocuous blade twice in a row to defeat it. I have to rest for a while. Oh, right. Shen Qingyun suddenly grabbed Lin Yi's arm and said in a low voice, the Blood Lady is not completely dead yet. Quickly use your divine telekinesis attacks to destroy it completely. Okay. Hearing this, Toyota, and Qingyu quickly got up and unleashed their strongest divine telekinesis power to crush the blood. Buzz. However, when the divine telekinesis attacks landed and crushed the blood, there was no reaction. What's going on? Seeing this scene, Toyota, and Qingyu both frowned, extremely surprised. ***, I don't believe it. Gritting their teeth, Toyota, and Qingyu gave their all. Their divine telekinesis power was like a stone mill, crushing the blood. Boom, boom, boom. However, no matter how hard they tried, their divine telekinesis power could not cause any damage to the blood. They could only watch helplessly as the blood gradually churned and gathered together. In an instant, Toyota, and Qingyu were anxious. Once the blood gathered together again, the Blood Lady would be formed again. Moreover, They couldn't be sure if the Blood Woman would become even more powerful after she took form. At this moment, Shun Xingyun was extremely weak, and she couldn't do anything at all. If Blood Maiden was allowed to take form once more, then all of them might perish here. No, we are disciples of Sibu Gakuin. If we can't even pass through a heavenly saint relic, how can we survive in the future? Gritting their teeth, Toyota, Yi, and Qin Yu both used their trump cards. Not far away, Lin Yi and Shin Xinyan were also looking at them nervously. Seeing that Feng Tianyi and Qin Yu were unable to cause any damage to the blood, the two of them were also extremely worried. No, I can't drag this on any longer. Shin Xinyan gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, I can't recover my fighting strength in a short time. Junior brother Lin, do you have any ideas? At this critical moment, Shun Xinyan bit her lips and looked straight at Lin Yi. Previously, when they were in danger, even when they were in the heavenly saint realm, it was Lin Yi who came up with the idea. Therefore, Shun Xinyan placed all her hopes on Lin Yi. It could be said that she trusted Lin Yi very much. This, after hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi saw the blood gathering together and felt his scalp go numb. Looking around, Lin Yi suddenly thought of the existence of the Heaven's Will Fan. The Heaven's Will Fan could convert the power of divine thought into the power of elements. Perhaps it could evaporate the blood. At this point, Lin Yi didn't hesitate anymore. He immediately let go of Shun Xinyan and jumped in front of Qin Yu and Toyota Yi. You two go and take care of senior sister Shun. Leave these dirty things to me. After taking a deep breath, Lin Yi immediately summoned the Heaven's Will Fan. Wong. As soon as the Heaven's Will Fan appeared, it started to absorb the remaining power of divine thought in Lin Yi's body and rippled with a special fluctuation. Sensing the fluctuation of the power of divine thought, Toyota, Yi, and Qin Yu hesitated for a moment and then retreated to take care of Shin Xinyan. Of course, they didn't dare to support Shin Xinyan. They just protected Shin Xinyan and looked nervously at Lin Yi. In their eyes, the Heavens Will Fan in Lin Yi's hand gradually changed color. A crimson flame quietly emerged from the Heavens Will Fan. Huh! With a soft cry, Lin Yi injected all the power of divine thought in his body into the Heavens Will Fan. The Heavens Will Fan shone with a crimson light. In the next moment, flames suddenly surged in the sky and turned into a sea of fire that suddenly burned the entire space. The scorching temperature roasted the surprised Toyota, Yi, and the others. Their power of divine thought was invisible, but now they were surprised to find that the flames summoned by Lin Yi actually contained the power of divine thought. They were instantly shocked. At this time, Lin Yi also realized that the Heavens Will Fan was the same as the person who left behind this relic. It could transform the power of divine thought into any form. He was also surprised. Could it be that there was some connection between the Heavens Will Fan and this relic? However, doubts aside, Lin Yi still activated the Heavens Will Fan with all his might and urged the flames that contained the power of divine thought to roast the blood. Gulp! Gulp! Not long after, his blood boiled. Under the intense heat, it actually turned into a mist that filled the sky and dissipated in the air. After 10 minutes, the remaining blood disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, Shun Xinyan, Toyota, Yi, and the others couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Blood Lady's death meant that their crisis was over. They could rest for a while to adjust their condition. More importantly, after Blood Lady's death, the rich power of divine thought dissipated again. This time, the power of divine thought was even thicker than before. It was many times thicker than before. Even Lin Yi was tempted by the offer. If the power of divine thought was given to him, he might be able to recover his power of level 35. Even if it was given to others, they might be able to break through a level. Phew, not bad. It was worth it to spend so much effort. Lin Yi sighed softly. After confirming that Blood Lady was dead, he immediately put away the Heavens Will Fan. His entire body felt extremely sore and numb, and he almost fell to the ground. Feeling the empty power of divine thought in his body, Lin Yi felt helpless. The heavens will fan was powerful, but it consumed too much power of divine thought. The power of level 34 power of divine thought was only maintained for a dozen breaths before it was completely drained. Stop cultivating. Quickly absorb the power of divine thought and recover. Lin Yi called out softly and immediately asked the others to absorb the power of divine thought. Shen Qingyan laughed softly and looked at Lin Yi's satisfied face. Her eyes were full of smiles. Soon, the 8 of them frantically absorbed the power of divine thought in the air. The surging power of divine thought was so dense that it condensed into a light screen that protected them. Sensing this, Lin Yi was no longer worried about Shen Qingyun's safety. He immediately calmed his mind and began to cultivate. End of chapter. Chapter 655. The surging divine sense aura surged and continuously poured into Lin Yi and the others, enhancing their divine sense power. At the side, Shen Qingyun's eyes were closed tightly as she recovered from her injuries. After an hour, all the divine sense aura was absorbed by Lin Yi and the others. Almost everyone had a significant improvement. Lin Yi's divine sense was restored to rank 35, while Feng Tianyi broke through to rank 58. His strength was more than twice as strong as before. The rest were also close to a breakthrough and only needed an opportunity. Only Shen Qingyun's previous injuries were too serious, and she still had not recovered. After the cultivation, Lin Yi got up and was about to wake Shen Qingyun up. However, he found that after the divine sense aura in the air dissipated, the white fog was gathering towards them. In just a few breaths, the white fog had gathered into a thick fog. It was so thick that it blocked the vision of Lin Yi and the others. Oh no, what's going on? Feng Tianyi and the others' faces changed drastically. They quickly leaned back to back and looked extremely nervous. The Blood Lady had already caused them so much trouble. If more mysterious monsters appeared, they were not confident in dealing with them. Damn it, how could this be? Everyone be careful. Feng Tianyi and Qing Yu quickly reminded everyone. Lin Yi directly pulled Shen Qingyun to his side and stared at the fog. Soon, Lin Yi's face became strange. He suddenly found that the white fog contained the aura of space. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Invisible waves bloomed and quietly dispersed the white fog around Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the others. Lin Yi and the others looked at each other curiously. Even Shen Qingyun withdrew from her cultivation and looked at the white fog in confusion. Buzz. Suddenly, the divine sense imprints in Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's bodies floated out again. They were suspended in the air and reflected the white fog. Blood red and milky white lights gradually lit up, shocking everyone. Hoo-hoo-hoo. The white mist suddenly gathered and condensed into a book. It then turned into countless glowing figures that entered Lin Yi's divine sense imprint. Shwa! The white mist completely dissipated, and the 2 divine sense imprints quickly flew back into Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's bodies. All of a sudden, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun felt a warm current flowing through their bodies. Their depleted energy, be it divine sense or saint energy, were all restored to their peak condition. This was especially true for Lin Yi, whose mind was filled with many insights. That secret manual was deeply engraved in Lin Yi's heart. Lin Yi's body trembled as he sensed the secret manual. Noticing this, Shen Qingyun quickly broke free from Lin Yi's protection. She waved to Feng Tianyi and the others, asking them to protect Lin Yi. At the same time, all the insights in Lin Yi's mind were madly integrated into Lin Yi's spirit and memory. After a long time, Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes. He stretched out his right hand, and a small ball of blood-red liquid condensed from divine sense appeared on his index finger. Drip! The blood-red liquid flew out and turned into a goshawk. It hovered in the air and released a surge of divine sense. Seeing this, Feng Tianyi and the others were stunned. Their mouths were slightly open, and their faces were full of disbelief. They could not believe that Lin Yi had mastered the method of using divine sense to transform into other forms. What surprised them even more was that Lin Yi's method seemed to be similar to the giant beasts and blood women from before. He also used divine sense to transform into blood and then into other forms. Gulp! At this point, Feng Tianyi and the others could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that after defeating Blood Woman, they could learn Blood Woman's ability? No matter how they guessed, Feng Tianyi and the others were full of jealousy towards Lin Yi. They understood that this opportunity had been taken away by Lin Yi. Phew! Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Lin Yi was also very surprised. He did not expect that after defeating Blood Woman, he would obtain the secret manual of the Five Spirits' divine technique, Blood Soul Scroll. Ahem! After coming to his senses, Lin Yi coughed and said awkwardly, "I'm sorry, brothers. I didn't expect that secret manual to directly enter my mind. Next time, if I encounter something good, I won't fight with you for it. It's okay." Hearing Lin Yi's words, Feng Tianyi and the others were very depressed, but they could not say anything. They could only smile and say that it was okay. Buzz! Another violent tremor appeared, and a door of light appeared out of thin air in front of Lin Yi and the others. The sudden appearance of the door of light shocked Lin Yi and the others, and they took a few steps back. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi and the others carefully sensed the door of light and found that it contained the power of space. They could not help but look at each other suspiciously. Blood Woman has been killed by us. This door of light is very likely to be the passage to the next trial location. Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "This heavenly saint relic is very strange. This time, we'd better go in together, lest we fall into the illusion again." Okay. Shen Qingyan nodded slightly. Feng Tianyi and the others looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Previously, they were almost trapped in the illusion and were unable to come out. It was all thanks to Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the others that they were saved. Therefore, they wouldn't refuse. If they were trapped again, that would be fun. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the others jumped up together and rushed into the door of light. Swoosh! After Lin Yi and the others entered the door of light, the white door of light suddenly dissipated. The entire space suddenly rotated and squeezed, like a ball of water being kneaded into a ball. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The next moment, the ball flickered with a crystal blue light and rippled with a special energy wave. When Lin Yi and the others opened their eyes again, what appeared in front of them was an endless purple-green light. Those lights were not like the white mist that filled the entire world. Instead, they formed countless light balls that floated in the air. In an instant, Lin Yi and the others were very surprised. They carefully sized up those purple-green lights. Looking around, the ground was full of green stone bricks with various patterns carved on them. Some were whirlwinds, some were thunderbolts, and they were arranged neatly. "Everyone, be careful." Sensing the abnormality of the green stone bricks, Lin Yi immediately reminded everyone, "There may be something wrong with these stone bricks. Everyone, don't move." Hearing that, Shen Qingyun, Qingyu, Feng Tianyi, and the others did not dare to move. They used their divine senses to sense the world around them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, there seemed to be a breeze. Those purple-green lights in the air flew in front of everyone like dandelions. End of chapter. Chapter 656. What's going on? Lin Yi and the rest were stunned when they saw the purplish-green light floating over. They looked at each other in astonishment. "Be careful." Fang Yuanpeng looked at the ball of light floating in front of him and couldn't help but reach out to touch it curiously. Crackle. However, the moment Fang Yuanpeng's finger touched the purplish-green light ball, a violent thunderbolt energy bloomed like an explosion. The surging shockwave erupted and almost sent Lin Yi and the rest flying. "What's going on? Fang Yuanpeng, are you courting death?" In an instant, Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the rest were shocked. They hurriedly protected themselves and blocked the strong wind. After the strong wind dissipated, Lin Yi and the rest looked up and their mouths twitched violently. Fan Yuanping's body was charred black and his hair stood up. Under the charred skin, there were countless wounds. However, the thunderbolt was too strong and the blood in the wounds had coagulated, turning them into scars. The purplish-green light contains the power of thunderbolt. Lin Yi and the rest looked at each other and frowned. No, Qing Yu said in a deep voice. Why do I feel that it's still the power of divine telekinesis? That's right. It's thunderbolt condensed from the power of divine telekinesis. Lin Yi touched his nose and sighed. The blood ladies and the giant beasts were all condensed from the power of divine telekinesis. The same goes for the thunderbolt. Phew, if that's the case, the thunderbolt territory in our territory is useless. It's really a good technique. Although thunderbolts weren't commonly used, there were many warriors who had a strong understanding of thunderbolts and could reduce the damage caused by thunderbolts. However, in this ruin, thunderbolts were formed from the power of divine telekinesis and were completely useless. No matter who came, the thunderbolts could cause the greatest damage to them. Puff! Just as Lin Yi and the rest were observing the purplish-green light, Fan Yuanping opened his mouth slightly and spat out a mouthful of black gas. He also woke up. Yuanping, are you okay? Seeing this, Toyota immediately asked. Fan Yuanping didn't dare touch the purplish-green ball of light again. He quickly replied, I'm fine. The power of the lightning isn't very strong. I can withstand it. It's just that it will numb you for a moment. As he spoke, Fan Yuanping jumped back a few steps, getting closer to Lin Yi and the others. At this time, Fan Yuanping looked at the purplish-green light that continued to drift over, fear still lingering on his face. Be careful, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. There are a lot of these light balls, and they're all different in size and brightness. I feel that their power will also be different. Who knows? We might encounter a particularly strong one. Fortunately, their speed is not very fast. With our strength, as long as we are careful, we can easily avoid them. Yes, Toyota, E, and the others nodded slightly. There isn't much of a problem with the purplish-green orbs. Now, let's see what's wrong with these bricks. Lin Yi pondered for a moment. He looked at everyone and said in a deep voice, the bricks we're stepping on now are engraved with thunderbolts. It can be seen that the thunderbolt pattern slate is very safe. Moreover, these bricks are arranged in a very regular pattern. They're almost composed of countless 9 squares. Each row and column has a thunderbolt pattern. So when we leave later, try to step on the thunderbolt bricks as much as possible. Then where should we go? Toyota, he looked around and sighed. There are purplish-green lights floating in all directions. There's no end in sight, and we can't see the distance clearly. This, rolling his eyes, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, the last level was a crisis hidden in the white fog. In my opinion, there won't be many changes this time. There must be more traps and dangers hidden in this space, waiting for us. Don't think too much. Just go straight. Touching his nose, Lin Yi jumped onto the next brick engraved with thunderbolts. Seeing this scene, Shun Qingyun, Toyota, E, and the others were stunned and their mouths twitched. A dignified saying was actually jumping and walking, which made them speechless. Why aren't you following? After jumping for a moment, Lin Yi didn't hear any sound. When he turned back and saw Shun Qingyun and the others standing there in a daze, he immediately shouted, Ahem! In an instant, Shun Qingyun, Qingwei, and Toyota, looked at each other and could only helplessly follow Lin Yi. They kept jumping and stepping on the thunderbolt bricks, following Lin Yi's direction. Along the way, the purplish-green light drifted, but the speed was quite slow. Lin Yi and the others paid a little attention and almost couldn't touch it. After jumping for about a kilometer, Lin Yi and the others didn't encounter anything. Everything was safe and sound. However, Lin Yi and the others didn't notice that the purplish-green light in the air drifted a little faster than before. Another hour passed. Lin Yi and the others went deeper and deeper. The purplish-green light around them gradually became bigger and brighter. Lin Yi and the others still didn't encounter anything and were surprised. This shouldn't be. Since it was a relic and a test, there must be traps or dangers. Why was there no change after so long? No. Lin Yi suddenly stopped, looked around, and said in a deep voice, "Have you noticed that the aura around us seems to have changed a lot?" Change. Hearing this, Toyota, Qin Yue, and the others were surprised. Their pupils shrank suddenly, and they stared around. Around them, countless purplish-green light drifted. There was nothing else except for that. It seems that nothing has changed. One of Toyota Yi's men whispered, "No, the color of the stone bricks on the ground seems to have become darker than before. It's not just the stone bricks, but also the color of the light." Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "I keep feeling that something is watching us." Watching us? Hearing this, Toyota, and the others' faces changed drastically. They looked around in a panic. For people, the unknown was the most frightening thing. "No, Junior Brother Lin, could it be that you sensed wrongly?" After looking around, Toyota, and the others didn't find anything and were surprised. "No, there must be something wrong." Lin Ye's eyes darted around as his expression turned grave. Shen Qingyun suddenly said, "Me too. I feel like we're being spied on." Spied on? The corners of their mouths twitched. Toyota, Qin Yue, and the others were puzzled. However, if it was only Lin Yi, they could say that they sensed wrongly. Shen Qingyun was powerful. If even she said that there was something wrong, they believed a lot. "Wait a minute." Frowning slightly, Lin Yi suddenly whispered, "We've been looking around just now. Could that thing be in the sky?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi suddenly raised his head, and his pupils suddenly shrank. In a chapter. Chapter 657. "Oh no!" Lin Yi exclaimed. His expression changed drastically, and his pupils contracted as he stared at the sky. "What's going on?" Suddenly hearing Lin Yi's cry of surprise, Shen Qingyun and the others hurriedly raised their heads. All of them sucked in a breath of cold air and revealed astonished expressions. High up in the sky, there was a giant purple-green bird hanging upside down every 100 feet. Those giant purple-green birds were huge, almost as tall as a person. Their eyes were closed, and their bodies were flashing with lightning and green light. They looked quite strange. Damn it, what kind of monsters are these? Seeing those giant purple-green birds, Feng Tianyi and the rest were shocked. It seems that these monsters are not demonic beasts of the present world. They are all condensed from the power of divine sense. Lin Yi frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "In my opinion, these giant purple-green birds are the test this time. I wonder if we can get the divine thought aura after defeating them." Speaking of this, Toyota, Qin Yu, and the others licked their lips and revealed excited expressions. The divine thought aura would greatly enhance their strength. At the thought of this, they even forgot about the danger. "Junior Brother Lin, why don't we lure one of them and see how strong they are?" Feng Fengyi's eyes turned as he looked at the purple-green giant bird in the sky. His eyes filled with greed. "Let's see how strong they are." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi did not refuse. Immediately, the 9 of them jumped and surrounded one of the giant purple-green birds. "I'll go first." Feng Tianyi took a deep breath. His divine thought power suddenly turned into an invisible sharp blade and pierced toward the giant purple-green bird. Screech! Almost at the moment when the divine thought blade pierced the giant purple-green bird, a screech suddenly sounded. The next moment, a surging sound wave rippled and swept across the sky. "Oh no!" Suddenly, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's faces changed slightly. They had an ominous premonition in their hearts. Screech! Screech! Suddenly, a few more screeches rang out, causing everyone to be greatly shocked. When they raised their heads to look, the corners of Lin Yi and the others' mouths immediately twitched violently. Their faces were filled with despair. More than 10 giant purple-green birds could be seen flapping their wings and circling in the air. Their sharp eyes were like the hooks of an eagle as they stared at them. "Damn it! We only alarmed one giant purple-green bird. Why are there so many of them? The corner of Feng Toyota's mouth twitched, and he quickly took a few steps back. If the purplish-green birds were as strong as Blood Maiden, then they might not be a match for a dozen of them. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At the same time, the purplish-green light floating in the air suddenly sped up. It was several times faster than before. Mother of asterisk cur, what's going on? When it rains, it pours. Noticing this, Toyota, Qing Yu, and the others couldn't help but reveal sorrowful expressions. Everything had come together. Screech. The screeches rang out again, and a strong gust of wind swept over. Several glowing purplish-green hurricanes gathered and rapidly fell towards Lin Yi and the others. Huh! Zheng Zhongyu shouted softly and suddenly stood up. He waved his fists and punched at the hurricanes that were falling rapidly. Let me test their strength first. Ice Fire Divine Fist. As Zheng Zhongyu shouted, red flames flickered on his left hand, and light blue ice crystals condensed on his right hand. Then they collided violently with the hurricanes. Crackle, crackle. However, almost at the moment when Zheng Zhongyu's hands collided with the hurricanes, a strong and violent thunderbolt bloomed and struck Zheng Zhongyu. In the shrill screams, Zheng Zhongyu was struck by the thunderbolt. His entire body turned black, and his meridians and limbs were filled with thunderbolts. He was extremely paralyzed and couldn't move. Damn it! Hurry up and save him. Seeing this, Lin Yi, Toyota, and the others' faces changed dramatically, especially Toyota. He immediately jumped up and waved his hands. The power of divine sense suddenly turned into a giant sword and pierced towards the hurricanes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The hurricane whistled and tore apart Zheng Zhongyu's skin with a swish. In the next moment, a violent energy erupted. Like a cannonball, it suddenly sent Zheng Zhongyu flying. He landed heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble violently. Boom! At the same time, the giant sword formed by the power of divine sense slashed at the hurricanes. The hurricanes stopped spinning abruptly, and in the next moment, they collapsed and turned into nothingness. Their strength is not even at rank 50. I can only use my divine sense to deal with them. Toyota, he shouted softly. His hands formed a seal, and the power of divine sense in the air suddenly turned into dozens of invisible sharp blades, piercing towards the purplish-green giant birds. Crackle, crackle. However, Toda, who was focused on controlling the power of divine sense, forgot to dodge the purplish-green light balls. The 3 light balls were like magnets attracted by a magnet. They landed on Toyota Yi's body with a bang, and a strong thunderbolt force suddenly bloomed. Even though Toyota, he had a rank 58 power of divine sense, the moment he was struck by the thunderbolt, he was momentarily stunned. It was at that moment that the attack formed by the power of divine sense in the air paused for a moment. The purplish-green giant birds seized the opportunity and immediately scattered, and immediately let out a shrill cry. Screech! The shrill cry suddenly sounded, and a strong sound wave suddenly swept out and spread out. It seemed to have the power to sweep across the 4 seas and the world. Phew! Toyota, he shook his head violently and quickly recovered from the state of paralysis. He exhaled a mouthful of smoke and immediately shouted coldly, "They are not very strong. Attack! Quickly finish them off." However, just as Toyota Yi's voice fell, he heard shrill cries coming one after another, constantly ringing in his ears. Looking up, Toyota, Lin Yi, and Shun Xingyun's faces suddenly stiffened. Zheng Zhongyu, who had just recovered, looked up and his face turned pale again. He simply lay on the ground again. In the air, a dense swarm of purplish-green giant birds appeared, flapping their wings and letting out shrill cries. Their eyes were fixed on Lin Yi and the others. Hundreds of purplish-green giant birds attacked together. The surging power of divine sense superimposed together, and it actually made Lin Yi and the others pale. Hiss! hundreds of purplish-green giant birds formed by the power of divine sense. Linyi, Tira, E, and the others looked at each other and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Their faces were extremely embarrassed. Well, why don't we surrender? Toyota, he wanted to cry, but had no tears. Isn't this too much? End of chapter. Chapter 658. Screech. Screeching sounds were heard continuously. In the next moment, the surging spiritual force attacks surged toward Lin Yi and the rest like a tidal wave. Feng Tianyi stopped joking around. With a long roar, the spiritual force in his body surged out wildly without any hindrance. There were hundreds of spiritual force flying birds. If he did not give it his all, he would be finished if he was killed. Qin Yu and the rest did the same. They unleashed their strongest powers and collided with the spiritual force waves. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun did not have spiritual force and could only watch in silence. Although Shun Qingyun's saber Dao could hurt those monsters, her power had to be spent on her saber. It was not time for her to strike yet. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, invisible explosions erupted in the air. Strong winds surged and swept in all directions. Although there were many spiritual force flying birds, they were too weak after all. After resisting the first wave of attacks, Qin Yu and Feng Yuanpeng used their spiritual force to protect everyone. Feng Tianyi and the rest continued to kill the spiritual force flying birds. At this moment, Zheng Zhongyu also jumped up from the ground and joined in the attack. Feng Tianyi and the rest had the lowest spiritual force of rank 56. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with a single spiritual force flying bird. Thus, following the sound of explosions, the divine telekinesis birds were killed one after another, turning into a cloud of divine telekinesis chi that remained in the air. Seeing this, Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the rest were ecstatic. In an instant, they became more motivated. Without Feng Tianyi's urging, everyone gave it their all. Under the frenzied attacks of the group, in just a dozen breaths, hundreds of spiritual force flying birds had turned into spiritual force aura. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect that although there were many spiritual force flying birds, they were so weak. Although they were weak, they contributed a lot of spiritual force aura. Amidst the laughter, Feng Tianyi and the rest looked around. After realizing that there were no surviving spiritual force flying birds, they immediately began to absorb the spiritual force aura. Half an hour later, the divine sense aura in the air had been completely absorbed, and everyone in Feng Tianyi's group had recovered to their peak state. Junior brother Lin, let's continue forward. There must be more spiritual sense birds ahead. If I kill more of them, I'll be able to break through. Everyone was extremely excited. Although the divine sense aura was not a treasure, it could increase their cultivation level. Its effect was even stronger than that of a treasure. After all, treasures were only external forces. One's own realm was something that would never change. Wait. Lin Ye's expression was grave as he suddenly said, "Everyone, be careful. There are changes here again." Hearing this, Feng Toyota, E, and the others were surprised. They frowned and looked around, then stared at Lin Yi. They did not notice any unusual changes. Lin Yi didn't care about the other people's gazes. He just scanned the surroundings. He had examined the sky and the surroundings, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, he had an ominous feeling in his heart. Junior brother Lin, we've already taken care of the spiritual sense birds. Why is there still something out of place? If that's the case, the purplish-green light blobs in the air have grown a little bigger. It seems that their power will increase with the passage of time. Yes, and their speed is getting faster and faster. Feng Tianyi rolled his eyes and said in a deep voice, "We have to end this quickly. If the light blobs are so fast that we can't dodge them and are paralyzed by them indefinitely, I'm afraid that any spiritual sense bird will be able to kill us." As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Tianyi and the others stared at Lin Yi with strange expressions. Obviously, they wanted to continue the chase. At the same time, Lin Yi also realized what the problem was. He turned his head and swept his gaze across the ground. Lin Yi immediately gasped as his gaze swept across the ground. His face was full of solemnity. Look, there are now some crystals between the stone bricks. Lin Yi suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the stone bricks on the ground. He said in a deep voice, "Purple light is beginning to appear in those crystals. I think, when the crystals are full, something big will happen. If we don't understand these crystals, we can't continue." Hearing this, Shen Qingyun, Feng Tian-yi, and the others frowned and looked carefully. Only then did they realize that Lin Yi was talking about the crystals. Their breathing suddenly quickened. "What are these? I don't remember these things existing before." "That's right," Feng Yuanpeng and the others murmured. "The stone bricks were so clean before. There was nothing there. Why did they suddenly appear?" "According to my speculation, the purple light in these crystals should have appeared after the spiritual sense birds were killed. However, if we want to confirm this, we have to kill more of them." Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi waved his hand and said, "Let's continue forward. Let's kill a few more spiritual sense birds and see what's the connection between them and the purple crystals." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi took the lead and continued jumping forward. Although Shen Qingyun and the others were very reluctant, they were not sure what was wrong with the stone bricks on the ground. They did not want to try, so they could only jump forward. After jumping like this for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, everyone had already jumped 5 kilometers away. Not far away, there were no purple crystals on the stone bricks on the ground. Looking up, they saw countless spiritual sense birds hanging upside down in the sky. "Just as I thought." Lin Yi frowned and said in a low voice, "Those purple crystals are indeed related to the spiritual sense birds. As long as we kill them, the purple crystals will appear on the ground. But why are those purple crystals not complete? Why are they only half complete? We have clearly killed all the spiritual sense birds. Why are there still half?" Hearing Lin Ye's words, Feng Tian-yi and the others looked at the spiritual sense birds hanging upside down in the sky and fell into deep thought. Could it be that we killed them wrongly? Feng Yuanpeng touched his nose. Just now we attacked randomly. If we killed them wrongly, there should be even fewer purple crystals. Feng Tianyi frowned and pondered for a moment, then said, "Why don't we kill all the spiritual sense birds in this area too? Let's give it a try." Lin Yi nodded slightly and said, "I'd like to see what those purple crystals are." As soon as his voice fell, Feng Toyoi did not hold back. With a slight movement of his mind, the power of his divine sense once again turned into a spike and pierced towards the divine sense flying bird that was suspended in the air. Screech! 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 The next moment there was a sudden roar. The surging power of divine sense was like a storm, crazily falling, crushing Feng Tian-yi and the others. End of chapter. Chapter 659. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Formless divine telekinesis was released like a storm. It swept out and collided with the divine telekinesis flying birds. This time, the divine telekinesis flying birds were slightly stronger than the previous wave. They had level 51 divine telekinesis. However, these divine telekinesis flying birds were still nothing in front of Feng Tian-yi and the rest. Once they were hit, they would turn into divine telekinesis aura. However, the divine telekinesis flying bird strength did not change much. The purplish-green light balls were much faster. When dealing with the divine telekinesis flying birds, Feng Tian-yi and the rest would be hit by the purplish-green light balls if they were not careful. They would be paralyzed by the lightning and would need a few breaths to recover. Noticing this, Lin Yi could not help but frown. Now that the divine telekinesis flying birds were weak, the purplish-green light balls were still fine and did not cause much harm to them. However, as the purplish-green light balls became faster and faster, if there were too many divine telekinesis flying birds behind them, or if their strength gradually increased to level 55 or level 56, their lives would be in danger. Why do these purplish-green light balls have the power of lightning? It would be much better if we could ignore these purplish-green light balls. Linya's eyes shone as he stared at the floor. He had a feeling that the most important thing to pass this stage was the pattern on the stone brick. Right now, the stone brick engraved with lightning was not dangerous. This was enough to prove that they had made the right choice. However, why did he have an ominous feeling in his heart? Just as Lin Yi was deep in thought, the situation of Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest became more and more tense. The purplish-green light balls became faster and faster. Other than Qing Yu and Feng Tian, Yi who could still dodge, the rest of them would be struck by lightning if they dared to control their divine telekinesis. Fortunately, the divine telekinesis flying birds were about to be dealt with. Fang Yuanpeng and the rest did not have to worry. They only needed to dodge. Screech. Suddenly, a divine telekinesis flying bird bypassed Qing Yu and the rest and quickly attacked Fang Yuanpeng. Feeling the violent wind, Fang Yuanpeng did not dare to be slow and quickly retreated. However, when he retreated, he collided with a purplish-green light ball. Not good. Fang Yuanpeng's heart skipped a beat. If he had been struck by the purplish-green light, the moment he was paralyzed, the divine sense flying birds behind him would have definitely hurt him. F***CK. Thinking of this, Fang Yuanpeng did not dare to move forward. He quickly moved to the side and directly crossed over. Pata! Landing lightly on the ground, Fang Yuanpeng dodged the attacks of the telepathic birds and the purple-green light balls like a nimble fish. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. However, in the next moment, their expressions turned serious again. Only then did they realize that the stone tile that Fang Yuanpeng had stepped on just now was carved with the pattern of a whirlwind. Their mouths twitching violently, Lin Yi and the others were stunned as they stared blankly at Fang Yuanpeng. They were curious about what would happen if they stepped on the whirlwind pattern. For a moment, the entire space fell silent. Even the purplish-green light and the spirit birds in the air stopped. Why are you all looking at me like that? Sensing everyone's gaze, Fang Yuanpeng was also stunned as he looked at everyone with a confused expression. Looking down, when he realized that he had stepped on the whirlwind pattern, he was immediately shocked and frightened. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, the sound of wind whistling rang in everyone's ears. Lin Yi and the others were shocked. When they looked up, they could not help but gasp. They saw that the purplish-green light balls were becoming more and more verdant as they sped up again. Sensing this, Fang Yuanpeng's heart tightened. Just as he was about to get up, a sudden gust of wind blew from the stone tile and sent Fang Yuanpeng flying. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The gust of wind spun, and in that instant, it eroded Fang Yuanpeng's entire body. A shrill cry rang out. Fang Yuanpeng only felt pain like a tide, continuously surging into his mind. His skin was torn apart by the gust of wind, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Screech! Screech! The screech rang out again, and the remaining spirit birds in the air suddenly changed their forms. Their wings expanded, and their claws became sharper. Their entire bodies looked much more harmonious. However, the lightning energy contained in their bodies dissipated. Seeing the changes in the spirit birds, the corners of Lin Yi and the others' mouths twitched, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Swoosh! Flapping their wings, the spirit birds were as fast as lightning, quickly attacking Feng Tianyi and the others. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Oh no, their speed has increased. At this point, Feng Tianyi and Qing Yu looked at each other. Their bodies spun, and together, they used their spirit power to weave a giant net, quietly trapping all the spirit birds. Screech! Feeling the giant net spread out, the spirit birds were also frightened and hurriedly tried to change direction. However, they were simply too fast. Before they could even change their direction, they had already crashed into the giant divine consciousness net. In the next moment, what welcomed them was countless spirit power crushing them. In less than 10 breaths of time, these divine sense birds had all turned into divine sense auras. At the same time, Fong Yuanpeng finally struggled out of the hurricane. His body was covered in blood, and he looked quite terrifying. As he left, the purplish-green light in the air slowed down. The hurricane on the stone bricks disappeared without a trace. It hurts. The corners of Fong Yuanpeng's mouth cracked, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He felt extremely depressed. Such a good thing just had to happen to him. Fortunately, the spirit power allowed him to recover quickly. Hurry, absorb all the spirit power. Without hesitation, everyone immediately absorbed the remaining spirit power in the air. Lin Yi was the first to finish absorbing. After he got up, the first thing he looked at was the ground. On the ground, there were indeed countless crystals. However, this time, although most of them were still purple crystals, there were some green lights. However, a portion of the crystals were already glowing with a green light. The two glows intertwined with each other, making for an interesting sight. As expected, it seems that the crystal needs to be half purple and half green in order to be effective. When the stone bricks step on the one engraved with lightning, it will trigger a lightning strike after triggering the purplish-green light. When it steps on the one engraved with a hurricane, it will trigger a hurricane. At the same time, when the stone bricks are triggered, the corresponding attributes of the spirit birds will also change. In a chapter. Chapter 660. Looking at the crystal on the ground, Lin Ye's expression was solemn. Not long after, Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest had finished absorbing the energy. Soon, they realized that something was wrong with the crystal. As you can see, I suspect that we have to kill half of the lightning attribute divine telekinesis birds and the other half of the wind attribute divine telekinesis birds. The stone bricks on ground. When you step on them, the purplish-green light will float up. When you touch them, it will trigger the corresponding pattern on the stone bricks. Hearing this, Feng Tianyi frowned and said gloomily, "If that's the case, doesn't it mean that we can't use any stone bricks?" Maybe there are other possibilities. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi suddenly walked to the boundary between the two stone bricks. In an instant, the purplish-green light that had been floating beside Lin Yi paused for a moment and floated toward the others. Seeing this, Lin Yi's lips curled up and he laughed out loud. Sure enough, as long as we step on the boundary between the two stone bricks, we will be fine. Hearing this, Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest quickly stood up like Lin Yi. Not long after, all the purplish-green light in the air stopped floating. Ha! I didn't expect that we would be stepping on the boundary instead of the stone bricks. Seeing that they could finally get rid of the purplish-green light, everyone was excited. However, Lin Yi grinned and said, "Wait a moment, we still have to trigger those stone bricks. According to the previous situation, we have to kill half of the lightning attribute divine telekinesis birds and make them change their attribute before we can kill them again and balance the attribute power in the crystal. Let's do as you say." Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest agreed without hesitation. Lin Yi was not pretentious. He immediately followed the boundary of the stone bricks and rushed to the next area. Walking like this was much faster than jumping. In just 10 minutes, Lin Yi and the rest arrived at a new area. He looked up and saw countless divine, flying dragons hanging upside down in the sky. However, these divine, flying dragons did not have the aura of lightning or wind, which surprised Lin Yi and the others. Soon, they realized that they were not standing on the stone bricks, so the spiritual wyvern in the air would not trigger its attributes. Thinking of this, Lin Yi immediately asked everyone to stand and wait for him for a moment, while he himself rushed up and circled around the area. A moment later, Lin Yi returned with an excited look on his face. "What did you do? Are you that excited?" Noticing the change in Lin Yi's expression, everyone was quite surprised and looked at Lin Yi in confusion. "I counted just now. There are a total of 666 divine telekinesis flying dragons. Remember the number when you kill them later. Don't kill too many. If you kill too many, the elemental energy in the crystal will still be unbalanced." Lin Yi said in a deep voice. After killing 333 divine while flying dragons, jump onto the tornado pattern immediately. Hearing this, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others looked at Lin Yi strangely. However, they also knew that Lin Yi wanted them to be able to pass through the ruins. Therefore, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others stepped onto the thunder brick and released their divine will, ready to attack at any time. Almost as soon as they stepped onto the thunder brick, the purplish-green light in the air suddenly flew towards them. At the same time, the divine flying dragon in the air quickly released its aura of lightning. Quick, retreat quickly! Feng Tian, Yi, and the others looked solemn as they stared at the divine flying dragon. When the divine flying dragon was filled with lightning aura, they all retreated to the side and stood on the boundary of the thunder brick. In an instant, the purplish-green light stopped moving and circled in the air. Noticing this, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others immediately heaved a sigh of relief. They were not afraid of the divine flying dragon. On the contrary, they were a little afraid of the purplish-green light. Fortunately, they could now avoid the attack of the purplish-green light. Boom, boom, boom. They released their divine will and quickly pierced towards the divine flying dragon in the air. In the next moment, the surging divine fell. Feng Tian, Yi, and the others once again began to kill the divine flying dragon in a frenzy. Just as they had predicted, the divine flying dragon's strength would increase almost every time they woke up. Unfortunately, as long as they did not reach level 55 or level 56, the divine flying dragon would not be able to cause any damage to them unless they had the help of the purplish-green light. However, now that they knew how to avoid the purplish-green light, they were in an invincible position. In the midst of the fierce battle, Lin Yi carefully calculated the numbers and stood on the boundary, ready to jump onto the hurricane at any time. Without the purplish-green light, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others were not restrained at all and could unleash their full strength. The speed at which they killed the divine flying dragon was incomparably fast. In less than 10 minutes, they had killed 333 divine flying dragons. Lin Yi exclaimed, as he shouted at the others. He had already stepped onto the hurricane's brick. Swoosh! In the next moment, the purplish-green light surged. On the brick, a hurricane spun and swept wildly. Seeing this scene, Feng Yuanpeng and the others could not help but show a look of pity, especially Feng Yuanpeng, who nodded slightly at Lin Yi. However, in the next moment, Lin Yi's body suddenly rushed out like a flying fish and stood on the boundary between the two bricks again. The purplish-green light in the air stopped again and spun continuously, as if there were flashes of fire. The corner of Feng Yuanpeng's mouth twitched. He clenched his fists and once again charged towards the divine flying birds in the air. The wind attribute divine flying birds were extremely fast. In addition, they were fighting separately this time, so they could not use the divine giant net to trap them. They could only kill them one by one. In this way, the speed at which they killed the remaining 333 divine flying birds was much slower. After an intense battle for an hour, the divine flying birds were finally killed. Lin Yi and the others quickly absorbed the divine aura. In the next moment, countless crystals appeared on the brick, flashing with purple and green light. They spun continuously and reflected each other. Suddenly, a ray of Theta Scarabii light was refracted from the crystals. It condensed and turned into a huge purplish-green gemstone. It contained a balance of lightning and hurricane attributes, which was extremely shocking. As expected, looking at the twinkling gemstone, Lin Yi and the others were excited. Obviously, they had figured out the rules of this ruin. What they had to do next was very simple. In a chapter, Chapter 661. After figuring out the pattern of this area, Lin Yi and the others no longer hesitated and quickly pushed forward. After sweeping through 3 regions, the strength of the spiritual sense birds had finally reached level 55. In this way, Lin Yi and the others did not dare to stimulate hundreds of spatial birds at once. Instead, they pulled them down in groups of 10 and quickly killed them while they were unable to call for their companions. Therefore, the speed of clearing the spatial birds slowed down. Fortunately, the purplish-green light balls were no longer a threat to them. Just like that, after 12 hours, all the areas had been cleared out by Lin Yi and the others. Every area had dual-colored gems, except for the first 2 areas. However, after all the areas had been cleared, the dual-colored gemstones only flickered with resplendent light. There was no other situation. This caused Lin Yi and the others to be stunned. Could it be that their guess was wrong? Frowning slightly, Lin Yi quickly remembered the first 2 areas and immediately rushed back with the others. At first, Feng Tianyi and the others did not dare to believe it. After all, in their opinion, the first 2 areas had been cleared. Even if they knew they were wrong, how could they make up for it now? Originally, they wanted to use other methods to stimulate the dual-colored gems. However, they could not persuade Lin Yi. In addition, Shen Qingyun had been protecting Lin Yi. They had no choice but to follow Lin Yi back. However, when they returned, they were surprised. The spiritual sense birds that had died had been revived. The crystal on the ground also dissipated. How is this possible? Hiss, the crystals in the previous areas were still intact. Why did everyone in this area come back to life? Everyone was very surprised and could not help but glance at Lin Yi. They were a little curious. How could Lin Yi guess this? As expected, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "As long as the dual-colored gems do not appear, that area is not complete. After we leave for a while, it will automatically recover. Phew, I hope the spatial birds here are still as strong as before. If this continues, breaking through to the 56th and 57th order will be troublesome." At this point, Feng Toyota and the others frowned. Just now, when they were cleaning up the last area, the divine thought flying bird strength had already risen to the peak of level 55. If it had risen to level 56 this time, their cleaning speed would probably be even slower. They didn't even dare to attract more than 10 spiritual sense birds at once. They could only kill them one by one. As a result, their speed was forcibly slowed down. This time, it took them more than 2 hours to kill all the divine flying birds. The dual-colored gem appeared, and a strange aura rippled in the surroundings. After absorbing the divine sense in the air, Feng Tianyi and the others were fully recovered. It had to be said that if it weren't for the divine sense aura, there would be no way to pass this stage. In the beginning, who would have thought that the spiritual birds would have different attributes when they stepped on different grids? Who would have thought that they would have to kill half of them to pass? Otherwise, these spirit sense birds would revive endlessly and increase their strength endlessly. Even if they knew, with so many spirit sense birds taking turns to exhaust them, their divine sense power would definitely be exhausted and they would die. If they were allowed to recover their divine sense power naturally, before their divine sense power was fully recovered, the divine thought-flying birds that they had killed earlier would revive again. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. They all glanced at Lin Yi. They suddenly felt very lucky that they had called Lin Yi. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for them to pass this stage. They might have been trapped in the illusion long ago. After the break, Lin Yi and the others headed towards the last area with a solemn expression. They were already at the peak of level 55 just now. Wouldn't the last area require level 56? When everyone arrived at the last area, as they had expected, all the divine thought-flying birds in the air had been revived. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi stepped on the thunder brick. In an instant, the divine thought-flying birds in the air were filled with power. The surging divine sense power even manifested into lightning and circulated around their bodies. Level 56 divine sense. Noticing this, Lin Yi suddenly exclaimed. He even forgot to dodge the purplish-green light balls. Crackle! The sky was filled with purplish-green light balls that flashed with lightning as they whistled towards Lin Yi. "Be careful!" Shen Qingyun cried out in alarm and hurriedly took a step forward to pull Lin Yi over. In an instant, the purplish-green light balls kept shaking as if they were drunk. Boom, boom, boom. The purplish-green light balls seemed to be completely enraged. They couldn't hit anyone and directly exploded. The berserk lightning was like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, rapidly drifting out. Crackle. The speed at which the lightning spread was extremely fast. Even Lin Ye's group of 9 could not react in time, and the lightning struck them directly. In an instant, Lin Yi and the others were paralyzed. They only felt their meridians aching. This shocked them. They didn't expect the power of the purplish-green light balls to be so strong. Puff! Not long after, Lin Yi and the others, including Shun Qingyun, all exhaled a mouthful of black smoke. The lightning was too terrifying. However, they didn't realize that after being tempered by the lightning, the divine sense power in their bodies was purer than before. Next, when we lure the divine sense birds to kill, everyone be careful. Don't step on other grids. If the purplish-green light balls attack us again, we may be finished. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi looked up at the sky and said seriously, "The strength of these divine sense birds has reached level 56. We have to lure and kill them in groups of 3. Feng Tianyi, Qingwei, the 2 of you finish them off. When they're about to call for someone, kill them and interrupt them." After giving the order, Feng Tianyi acted decisively. He suddenly turned his divine sense power into a giant net and covered the 3 divine sense birds, dragging them down quickly. Screech! In an instant, the 3 divine sense birds were alarmed and immediately screeched. However, Feng Tianyi's speed was extremely fast. When they screeched, they had already distanced themselves from the other divine sense birds and didn't alarm them. "Let's go together." With a soft shout, Feng Yuanpeng, Zheng Zhongyu, and the others rushed forward. Their divine sense turned into sharp blades, stabbing at the several divine sense flying birds. Poof! Poof! The divine sense was invisible. When it came into contact with the divine sense birds, the lightning bloomed and dissolved all the divine sense power. Screech! In the next moment, the sharp divine sense power, mixed with the power of lightning, swept out like a storm. End of chapter. Chapter 662. Seeing the violent power of thunder blooming, Lin Shui suddenly summoned the devouring heaven mirror and activated his saint power. Buzz! In the next moment, countless thunderbolts gathered in front of Lin Yi and entered the heaven-devouring mirror. Walala! In just a dozen breaths, the thunderbolt aura that filled the space dissipated and was absorbed by the heaven-devouring mirror. Seeing this, even Toyota, E, and the rest were stunned. Screech! The divine telekinesis birds screeched and gathered the thunderbolt aura on them again. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it!" Toyota, E suddenly reacted and shouted. In an instant, Feng Yuanpeng and the rest attacked again. This time, the thunderbolt aura of the divine telekinesis birds had not been successfully gathered and could not stop their attack. They were instantly penetrated by the divine telekinesis. Screech! 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 The divine telekinesis birds were in pain and screeched. In the next moment, they circled and were ready to summon the rest of the divine telekinesis flying dragons. However, Toyota, E, and Qingyu had been waiting for this moment. Almost instantly, the giant divine telekinesis net turned into 3 sharp blades and chopped off the heads of the divine telekinesis birds. Rumble! Thunderbolts bloomed, and the 3 divine telekinesis birds turned into divine telekinesis aura and stagnated in the air. Lin Yi and the rest did not dare to be careless. They once again absorbed the divine telekinesis aura and recovered to their peak state before continuing to kill. With Feng Yuanpeng and the rest breaking through the power of the divine telekinesis birds, the heaven-devouring mirror absorbing the thunderbolt, and Toyota, E, and Qingyu stopping. Even though the divine telekinesis birds had reached rank 56, they were still no match for Lin Yi and the rest. For hours later, after the last 3 divine telekinesis birds were beheaded and their divine telekinesis auras were absorbed, countless crystals filled the area. Purplish-green light flashed, and a dual-colored gem appeared. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Almost at the same time, the dual-colored gem appeared. Another ray of light was reflected from the dual-colored gem and bounced into the sky. Swoosh! Not only that, but there were also several rays of light in the sky and finally gathered together to form a light door. As this stage was cleared so easily, seeing the light gate, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and the others were incomparably surprised. They had thought that this trial would be the same as the previous one, where a powerful existence that had fused all the powers would appear at the end. Who would have thought that he would be able to get rid of the spiritual birds so quickly after dispersing them? Phew, I wonder what the reward for this stage will be. Toyota, Yi, and the others turned to look at Lin Yi with grins on their faces. It was all thanks to Lin Yi that they were able to deal with Blood Maiden. Therefore, they were confident that Lin Yi would be able to obtain the final treasure. But this time, it was practically all thanks to them that they were able to pass through. If they still couldn't obtain the treasures, then wouldn't they be depressed to death? That's not right. Lin Yi frowned slightly and said softly, "Why do I feel that this doesn't seem to be the end?" Hearing that, Toyota, Yi, and the others were instantly surprised. They looked up and were surprised to see that within the light gate, purplish-green rays of light were constantly fusing and rotating. It contained a violent power. Noticing that, Toyota, Yi, and the others immediately panicked. Not only in the sky, but around them, the purplish-green light balls were still rotating and emitting a terrifying aura. Indeed, I knew that this relic wouldn't end so easily. Rumble! As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of thunder suddenly roared and reverberated in everyone's ears, shocking their minds. A figure suddenly stepped out of the light gate. That figure was extremely burly and was surrounded by green whirlwinds and purple thunderbolts. One could only vaguely see that there was a pair of huge bird wings on his back that flickered with lightning. Roar! As soon as the figure appeared, he let out a long roar and brought along bursts of thunder. The purplish-green light balls that filled the sky flew into the air and revolved around the figure. Crackle! Lightning shone and covered the figure. From afar, it looked like a god. Damn it, this guy's strength doesn't seem to be any weaker than Blood Lady. Toyota, Yi, and the others looked extremely solemn. Let's go together. With a soft roar, Toyota, Yi, and the others did not show the slightest fear and immediately rushed up. Their divine sense power interweaved into a net and pounced on the figure in the air. Poof! However, before the divine consciousness net could open, a couple of thunderbolts fell and scattered the divine consciousness net with a loud bang. Crackle! The purplish-green light balls spun faster and faster. This time, they did not even need to touch Lin Yi and the others. Thunderbolts bloomed, and their power was shocking and terrifying. In an instant, the attacks of Toyota, Yi, and the others were immediately hindered. They dodged the Thunderbolt's attacks while attacking the huge figure. Roar! However, it was not over yet. The figure opened his hands, and suddenly a longbow appeared. Countless thunderbolts in the air gathered on the longbow. Buzz! Buzz! In just a few breaths' time, a bow that was completely formed by thunderbolts flashed with purple brilliance and pierced through the air, shooting toward Toyota, Yi, and the others. Moreover, it was not just one arrow. That figure was like a machine that did not know exhaustion. He continuously drew his bow and arrows. In less than a dozen breaths of time, purple lightning arrows filled the sky. They were like giant dragons as they roared and charged towards Feng Tian, Yi, and the others. Not good. Seeing this scene, Toyota, Yi, and the others suddenly turned pale. Lin Yi was also extremely worried and quickly activated the devouring heaven mirror. Buzz! A surging suction force appeared. In the next moment, the purple thunderbolts changed direction and rushed toward the devouring heaven mirror in Lin Yi's hand. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Toyota, Yi, and the others made their moves. Shen Xingyun also did not hold back. With a roar, a long saber appeared in her hand. She suddenly raised it and immediately rushed out at an extremely fast speed. The sharp blade swept through the air, bringing about a burst of whistling sounds. When she rushed in front of the figure, Shun Qingyun's wrist turned, and the long saber was already chopping down on the figure's head. Clang! It had to be said that Shun Qingyun's speed was too fast. Even the Thunderbolt's light could not catch up with her. The figure did not even have time to react and was immediately struck by the Thunderbolts. However, just as the long saber fell, the purplish-green ball of light on the figure's body, rotating with Thunderbolts, instantly exploded. Boom! 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 The purplish-green light was so bright and dazzling that it hurt the eyes of the crowd. The violent thunderbolts, mixed with the power of a hurricane, shrouded Shun Qingyun. Senior Sister Shun. Senior Sister Shun. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi and the others were greatly shocked. They cried out in surprise as they stared fixedly at the ball of resplendent purplish-green light. In a chapter. Chapter 663. Crackle, crackle. Lightning blossomed and flickered with resplendent light. The power contained within it caused the pupils of Lin Yi and the rest to shrink. That power was too strong, to the extent that they weren't confident that Shun Qingyun would be able to withstand it. Boom! Suddenly, like the eruption of a volcano, the ball of light flickering with a purple-green light suddenly exploded. Sharp saber chi was like magma, spewing out unceasingly. Plop! Powerful blade, aura, swept across the sky, causing the entire space to shatter. A figure flew out from within. She immediately turned around and brandished her long blade once again. She violently slashed at the body that was completely enveloped by lightning and hurricane. Bang! This attack crushed space, shattered the lightning, pierced through the hurricane, and swept past the figure with a loud bang. Crack! In an instant, the lightning collapsed and the hurricane dissipated. The purplish-green ball of light in the sky stopped revolving and just floated in the air. Even the lightning that flowed on the surface of the ball of light no longer burst forth. This is SSS, Senior Sister Shun, is so awesome. When they saw this scene, Lin Yi and the rest, who were originally shocked, were stunned. They were lost in thought as they stared at the petite figure in the sky that contained the power of a volcano eruption. Crack! 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 The clear sounds suddenly became faster. Everyone raised their heads and looked over, only to see that the figure had shattered into pieces that filled the sky and flew in all directions. It's over just like that? Lin Yi and the rest frowned. They did not dare to believe that Shun Qingyun had actually destroyed this stage with a single slash. Be careful. This is the Heavenly Saint relic. It's definitely not that simple. Lin Yi waved his hand and indicated for everyone to stay put. In the sky, Shun Qingyun held her long blade. Her expression was cold as she looked at the floating fragments without the slightest bit of relaxation. Blood Woman had caused them a lot of trouble in the previous stage. They did not believe that they would be able to pass this stage so easily. Buzz! Buzz! As expected, after a moment, all the lightning energy in the sky merged with the hurricane. Crackle! The hurricane swept out, and the power of thunder contained within burst out like an octopus. However, its tentacles were filled with thunder. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, countless tentacles, mixed with the power of thunder, swung toward Shun Qingyun. Ha! Dazzling heavenly sword. Shun Qingyun shouted loudly. The long saber in his hand suddenly turned into countless saber chi and flew out unceasingly. It collided with the thunderbolts and issued explosive sounds. However, after the thunderbolt exploded, the hurricane passed through the shockwave and quietly arrived in front of Shun Qingyun. Not good. Fortunately, Shun Qingyun had been very careful. The moment she sensed the hurricane, she raised her long saber and slashed out fiercely. At the same time, countless saber chi swirled around and protected Shun Qingyun. Rumble. In an instant, this area had turned into a space where saber chi, lightning, and hurricanes collided. The strong force even forced Lin Yi and the others to retreat a lot. Fortunately, the purple-green light in the sky was all caught by the figure, so they did not have to worry. However, the few of them had to watch Shun Qingyun fight the thunderbolts and hurricanes alone. Their faces were a little embarrassed. "Why don't we go up and help?" After a long time, Fang Yuanpeng and the others asked. "Go up and help?" Lin Yi curled his lips and said, "Do you have the confidence to resist those thunderbolts?" Hiss! The sound of cold air was heard, and Fang Yuanpeng could not help but shrug his shoulders. The battle in the sky made their scalps tingle. Except for Toyota, who had the ability to intervene, the others could only watch. Toyota, he did not dare to intervene casually. If he angered Shin Qingyun, it would be troublesome. Phew, I'm just a little bit away from breaking through to level 59. After I break through, I will be able to fight against this level of existence. Toyota, he clenched his fists. He did not want to watch Shun Qingyun fight all the time. Although it would be easy for him to pass through the ruins, when it was time to divide the treasures, what would he do? Shun Qingyun and Lin Yi had both made such great contributions. However, Shun Qingyun was not a cultivator of divine sense. If he saw Lin Yi taking all the treasures alone, he would definitely go crazy. Rumble. Just as Lin Yi, Tada Yi, and the others were talking, in the sky, an ice-blue saber chi transformed into a giant dragon roaring and circling. Harmless saber. The sharp saber chi covered the sky and the earth as it suddenly swept across this space. In an instant, the world fell silent. Crack, crack, boom. The space collapsed, and the figure completely condensed by the thunderbolts and hurricanes burst into countless fragments, floating in the air. Cough, cough. There was a slight cough, and Shun Qingyun's figure fell. This time, although she was exhausted, she could still stabilize her body. Obviously, after the previous battle, Shun Qingyun had also improved. Logically speaking, the stages in these ruins were more difficult than the previous one. Shun Qingyun had to give it her all in the battle against Blood Lady. This time, she still had energy left, which surprised Lin Yi and the others. "I'll leave the remaining purplish-green light balls to you," Shun Qingyun said in a low voice. "I don't have the power of divine sense, so I can't completely destroy them. Then leave them to me." Lin Yi grinned and took out the Tianyi fan again. He had already seen that in order to completely destroy these things, he had to use his divine sense to condense an elemental power to restrain them. Otherwise, these things would be immortal. To restrain the power of wind and thunder, I have to stop the invincible thunder and resist the erosion of the wind. Hiss, this is a little difficult. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and suddenly thought of a possibility. Immediately, the corners of his mouth curled up. With a slight thought, he poured the remaining power of his divine sense into the Tianyi fan. Buzz! The Tianyi fan shone brightly. Lin Yi waved his right hand gently. In the next moment, countless rays of brownish-yellow light bloomed. It was extremely bright. At the same time, a heavy mountain fell, suppressing all the purplish-green light balls in the air. The earth of the mountain suppressed them. Both of his hands formed a seal, and the Tianyi fan shone brightly. In the mountain, the purplish-green light balls could no longer maintain the fusion of the power of wind and thunder, and they all collapsed. As they collapsed, their existence also quickly dissipated. In just a moment, they turned into divine sense aura that filled the sky, drifted out from the mountain, and condensed in the sky. This, divine sense aura. Haha, we've passed this stage. Feeling the divine sense aura dissipating, everyone was extremely excited. They all began to circulate their energy and absorb the divine sense aura in the air. In a chapter. Chapter 664. After absorbing the divine sense aura, a lightning flashed in the sky, mixed with a hurricane. Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun's divine sense imprints appeared again, condensing into a light gate. Phew, When the divine sense imprints fell back, Lin Yi had another cultivation technique in his mind. 5 spirits divine art, wind and thunder roll. 5 spirits divine art. Another 5 spirits divine art. Lin Yi's eyes turned, and he couldn't help but say, "In my opinion, this heavenly saint relic is very likely to be designed with elements as the foundation. The first one is water, the second one is wind, and the next one must be fire, wood, and earth elements. Now that you mention it, it's true." Toyota, he touched his nose and whispered, "Although the first one looks like blood, it's actually still water. In this one, although the thunder is very strong, it's still wind in essence. Wind is all-pervasive and extremely stable. It's because of the wind attribute that the thunder's penetrating power is so strong. Phew, I'm a little excited. I wonder what kind of power will appear in the next 3 stages. It's fine if 2 kinds of power fuse together, but I'm worried that the next stage will be a combination of many kinds of elemental power." Lin Yi shook his head and said, "But fortunately their strength didn't increase much, and we can absorb the divine sense aura to increase our strength, so it's easy to pass these 5 stages. But we still have to be careful. I always feel that these 5 elemental stages have some special function." "Well, we'll be careful." Toyota, and the others looked at each other and sighed again. "Sigh, I really don't know what other stages there are after these 5. Are there any treasures? If it's just the divine sense aura, although it can increase our realm, it's still not as good as a divine sense treasure or a divine sense cultivation technique." Toyota, and the others looked at Lin Yi enviously. They also wanted to learn the cultivation technique that Lin Yi had just obtained. Aware of this, Lin Yi grinned and didn't say that he had obtained another 5 spirits divine art. Otherwise, Toyota, and the others might go crazy. "Let's not talk about it. Let's go to the next stage." As he spoke, Lin Yi and Shun Qingyun looked at each other. They both leaped up and rushed towards the light door in the sky. The benefits brought by the divine sense imprint allowed their strength to improve again and made them yearn for the next 3 stages even more. If it was as they guessed, they would be able to increase, and their divine sense aura would be a great improvement. Soon, the group of 9 completely disappeared from the space. "Be's easy." Just like the previous space, this time, this space turned into a hurricane that spun continuously. Soon, it condensed into a ball of wind that contained the power of lightning and flashed with light. At the same time, Lin Yi and the other 8 arrived at the next stage. Almost at the same time as they opened their eyes, Lin Yi and the other 8 simultaneously felt a burning sensation. When they lifted their heads, they saw that their surroundings were filled with volcanoes, and crimson-red magma was flowing. Volcanic lava? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They looked around and were all shocked. They were in a volcanic mountain range. In addition to the continuous volcanoes, there were many magma lakes, and the plates under their feet were scorching hot. What shocked them even more was that the plates were not fixed, and they were floating on the magma with the wind. Lin Yi took a step forward, looked at the magma carefully, and said in a deep voice, "This magma, like the purple-green light ball, is full of fire elemental energy. Be careful, everyone. If you fall in, you might lose your life." Lose our life? Hearing this, Toyota, and the others quickly took a few steps back, and their expressions changed slightly. "How are we going to pass this stage?" Shun Qingyun frowned and looked at Lin Yi. In fact, Shun Qingyun was very smart, but with Lin Yi around, she did not want to use her brain. She preferred to let Lin Yi take on everything. "Phew, the magma should be like the purple-green light ball. There might be danger in it, and it might be something made of divine thoughts rushing out. Everyone be careful." Lin Yi looked around and pondered for a moment, then said, "The key to breaking the formation should be in the volcanoes. Look, there are only 7 volcanoes in this area. 3 volcanoes are together, and the other 4 on the other side. Coincidentally, there are 3 yin fire and 4 yang fire. Together, there are 7 volcanoes. Therefore, there's an 80% chance that the key to breaking the formation is in the volcanoes. So we are now at the Yang fire. Should we kill them one by one? Toyota, E, and the others rub their fists, eager to try. Well, let's see what is in the first volcano. Nodding slightly, Linyi did not waste time. He immediately led the 8 people to the volcano closest to them. Rumble. A woo. Sure enough, it was just as Linyi and the others had guessed. They had only taken a few steps when the magma beside them began to surge intensely. In the next moment, a huge dragon that was completely agglomerated from magma appeared. It circled around and charged towards the group with a howl. These giant dragons were very powerful. Each of them had the strength of a level 53 or level 54. However, although they were more powerful than the previous 2 stages, there were much fewer of them. Only 3 of them appeared at the same time, which was not enough to fill the gaps between Linyi and the others' teeth. In order to attract more magma dragons, Toyota, E, and the others would sometimes deliberately extend their hands to the surface of the magma to tempt them. In this way, when Linyi and the others reached the first volcano, one of them broke through directly. Stepping into the volcano, the magma dissipated, and what appeared in front of them was a crimson magma tunnel. In the tunnel, there were countless withered corpses, and there were even many red strips hanging on the walls. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Just as Linyi and the others carefully went in for a while, all the crimson strips on both sides of the tunnel wriggled and roared. Linyi's group of 9 was greatly shocked. They turned their heads to look and discovered that after those strips fell down, they were actually volcanic lizards. Those lizards were covered in crimson carapaces, and they were especially terrifying. So many lizards. Toyota, E, and the others looked around, and their faces were extremely solemn. In the entire tunnel, densely packed volcanic lizards were crushing toward them. Crimson flames surged like a sea of fire, and the flames burned brightly. Although the volcanic lizard's strength was only around a level 52 divine thought, when their numbers accumulated to a certain extent, it was still terrifying. End of chapter. Chapter 665. Rumble. Linyi took out the Heaven's Wolf fan, and in an instant, the divine sense in the sky turned into a soft liquid that flowed out like a raging river. Puff, puffed. Almost instantly, the volcanic lizards collided with the water flow. Their attacks came to an abrupt end, and in the next moment, smoke rose from their bodies, and the flames on their bodies were extinguished by the water flow. As for their bodies, they were entangled by the Een water. They were constantly battered and smashed into pieces. The power of water should never be underestimated. In just a few breaths of time, all the volcanic lizards in the tunnel had turned into divine sense energy. Linyi kept the Heaven's Will fan and greedily absorbed the divine sense energy to recover his divine sense energy. This time, because Linyi had defeated so many volcanic lizards by himself, Feng Tian, E, and the others did not compete with Linyi for the divine sense energy. They waited until Linyi had absorbed most of it before they began. After the absorption, Linyi and the others rushed into the volcano again. It had to be said that the Heaven's Will fan was very powerful, and all the volcanic lizards in the tunnel had been dealt with. When Linyi and the others arrived at the volcano, they were surprised to see that the interior was extremely empty. Other than the 4 volcanic craters, there was nothing else. Linyi and the others looked at the 4 volcanic craters. They were filled with magma, but they were rather calm. Hiss, is there nothing else here? Feng Tian, he looked around carefully and said with a grin, that shouldn't be. There should be something else. There must be. Linyi rolled his eyes and suddenly stared at the 4 volcanic craters. He said in a deep voice, it's time to act. As his voice fell, Linyi lifted his right foot and slammed it down. Rumble. With the infusion of a huge amount of saint power, Linyi's foot caused the entire volcano to tremble. Linyi, what are you doing? Junior brother Lin. In an instant, Toyota, E, and the others were surprised and looked at Linyi in confusion. Rumble. All of a sudden, lava gushed out from the 4 volcanoes. Roar! Almost at the same time as the magma gushed out, from magma dragons appeared and roared. This time, the 4 magma wyverns were even more powerful than before. They had the strength of level 55. There's really a magma wyvern? Feng Tian, E, and the others were shocked. They immediately attacked, each displaying their strongest power. They didn't want to be killed by Lin Yi again. If that happened, they wouldn't be able to obtain too much spiritual force. How could a mere rank 55 divine will wyvern block the power of Toyota, E, and the others? In just over 30 breaths of time, before the 4 magma wyverns had time to be arrogant, they had turned into pure, divine sense auras. Feng Tianyi, Feng Yuanpeng, and the others greedily absorbed the divine will aura. If I absorb about 5 more volcanoes, I should be able to break through to level 59. Feng Tianyi grinned and said, by then, I will be able to fight those mutated big guys alone. Shen Qingyan nodded slightly and didn't say anything. Then, you'll have to absorb more divine sense auras. Lin Yi had no objection. He had already obtained many treasures. If even the divine sense aura was strong, wouldn't Feng Tian, E, and the others cry? Moreover, Feng Tianyi's strength could be improved, which was also good for them. No one knew what would be in the next trap. With Shen Qingyan alone, there were too many uncertainties. Moreover, Lin Yi didn't want Shen Qingyan to fight. Since Feng Tian, he wanted to carry it himself. Lin Yi was happy to see it. After absorbing the divine sense auras of the 4 magma wyverns, the entire volcano trembled. A scarlet-red ball of light appeared on each of the 4 volcanic craters. Looking from a distance, it looked as though flames were burning. Hum, hum, hum. 4 fiery red lights quietly shot out from the red ball of light. They condensed in the air and formed a beautiful figure. It looked like an elf, but also like a demon. This, narrowing his eyes, Lin Yi said softly, it seems that the last thing we have to deal with in this round is the flame demon. TSK, why do you care so much? Feng Tianyi grinned and said, let me break through to rank 59. It'll be easy to deal with them. Let's go, let's continue. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi didn't say anything. He quickly left with the others and rushed to the next volcano. The 4 volcanoes of Yang Fire contained the same things, including the monsters. In order to maintain the divine sense of the others, Lin Yi directly used the divine wolf fan. Soon, the 4 volcanoes of Yang Fire were cleared. Lin Yi and the others rushed to the Yin volcano. Yang Fire and Yin Fire, although they were both flames, the feeling they gave off was completely different. When Lin Yi and the others arrived at the Yin Fire area, they all trembled and felt a chill run down their backs. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. At the same time, the originally red magma emitted a pale white flame. It looked particularly bleak, like a will-o'-the-wisp. Hiss! This is the Yin Fire? Why does it feel like ice? Feeling the bone-piercing cold, Feng Tian, E, and the others' faces changed slightly. They couldn't believe that there was bone-piercing cold in the midst of the flames. This is the Yin Fire, Lin Yi said in a low voice. Although the Yin Fire is also a fire, it doesn't have the characteristics of a flame. It only has the shape of a flame. You can treat them like ice. Be careful. The form of the Yin Fire must have changed. After reminding them, Lin Yi took the lead and walked at the front. Shen Qingyan walked at the back, in charge of covering the rear. Soon the magma on both sides of Lin Yi surged. The cold air was like ice blades, constantly slapping their faces. Feng Tian, E, and the others' faces turned red. Oh, whoa! A shrill scream rang out. In the next moment, pale white flames surged and turned into a fox burning with white flames. As soon as the foxes appeared, they curled up together like a fireball and charged toward Lin Yi and the others. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A gust of wind rose, and the pale white flames spread out like ice crystals. Oh no! Seeing this, Lin Yi immediately stepped back and shouted, be careful. Don't let them hit you. Otherwise, we will be frozen too. Hearing this, Feng Tian, Yi, and the others' faces changed dramatically. They all attacked, spreading out their divine sense and colliding with the flaming foxes. Boom, boom, boom. The flames exploded and Feng Tian, Yi, and the others trembled. They all felt a cold air flowing through their meridians and into their bodies. This horrified them. They didn't expect that just the contact of their divine sense could cause the cold air to spread to their bodies. End of chapter. Chapter 666. Bang, bang, bang. Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest were powerful. With just a little bit of force, the snow foxes were completely crushed. Then they sealed the cold air in their bodies and gradually digested them. As for Shen Qingyan, she just flashed her long saber. The terrifying saber aura made the fire foxes not dare to rush towards her. This scene made Feng Tian, Yi, and the rest gasp in amazement. Who knew when they would be able to possess such powerful strength? Phew, fortunately, the snow foxes formed by the Yin flames only have the strength of around rank 53. Seeing that the crisis was over, Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. His face was solemn as he said in a deep voice, "Next, we have to rush down in one go. Don't disperse the power of your divine sense. Keep guard. Yang flames are fine, their attacks are open and above board, but the Yin wind is different." With Lin Ye's reminder, everyone had already seen the biting cold of the Yin wind. They did not dare to be careless. After a while, Lin Yi and the rest arrived at the first Yin fire volcano. The internal structure of the volcano was the same as before, but there were no fire lizards in the tunnel. Instead, there were balls of Yin flames emitting biting cold air. It was as if they were going to freeze their entire bodies. It sounded funny that the flames were going to freeze people, but in reality, the cold air contained in the Yin flames was more biting than millennium black ice. Fortunately, Lin Yi had the heavens will fan. The Yin flames had the cold air, and the water could naturally boil. Water with a temperature of thousands of degrees gushed out. In just a moment, all the Yin flames were boiled and the cold air dissipated. Seeing that all the Yin flames had dissipated, Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. In truth, he was not sure if the boiling water could suppress the Yin flames. Unfortunately, the goddess of luck was standing behind Lin Yi. After passing through the tunnel, there were still 4 volcanic craters. Boom, boom, boom. He stomped his feet. This time, the Yin flames that came out of the craters did not turn into snow foxes. Instead, they turned into 4 figures. They were like the legendary celestial soldiers and generals, emitting a cold air and flickering with a bleak white light. Hiss! What is this? Why did it change again? In a split second, Lin Yi and the others frowned. They were all stunned. Although their shapes had changed, the power contained within their bodies had not. The 4 figures raised their hands at the same time as endless cold chi surged. Boom, boom, boom. A strange cold air suddenly surged from Lin Ye's group of 9 and began to swirl. Around them, white flames burned fiercely. Hiss! He still has some tricks up his sleeve. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi was not afraid at all. He activated the heavens will fan again. Crash! The boiling water rolled, and in the blink of an eye, the rotating and burning white flames were extinguished. Attack! Toyota, E, and the others were veterans who had been through hundreds of battles. How could they miss such an opportunity? With a soft shout, the 6 of them leapt out at the same time, their divine sense intertwining like silk threads, instantly binding the 4 figures together. Crash! Under Lin Ye's control, the boiling water flowed and watered them to their heart's content. Poof, poof, poof. It had to be said that after going through the previous 2 stages, Lin Yi and the others' divine sense had greatly improved. Now, facing these monsters formed by divine sense again, although they were powerful, they were no longer afraid. As the divine sense aura appeared, the 4 figures quickly dissipated. After Lin Yi and the others had absorbed the divine sense aura, the Yin flames turned into 4 white flames and condensed into a demon figure. It was clear that the fairy figure was the final protector. At the same time, Toyota finally broke through to rank 59 divine sense. The surging divine sense almost overturned the volcano. After Toyota's breakthrough, the group celebrated for a while before continuing their journey. They still needed 2 more volcanoes. After 2 hours, the 2 volcanoes had been dealt with. As the last demon formed from flames appeared, the entire volcano began to tremble violently. Boom, boom, boom. This part of the world seemed to be about to collapse. The sky fell and the earth cracked. The 7 volcanoes collapsed with a loud rumble. Fortunately, Lin Yi and Toyota reacted quickly. They used their divine sense to protect the group and float in the air. When they looked down, Lin Yi and the others gasped. Their faces were full of shock. They could not believe that all the plates, volcanoes, and cliffs were covered by magma. The entire space had turned into a world of magma. At a glance, everything was boiling magma. Gulp! Gulp! The yin flames and yang flames were divided into 2 halves. From the top, they looked like a pair of yin and yang fish. In the magma, the flame lizard, flame dragon, and yin flame snow fox were all hidden. They stared at Lin Yi and the others in the air. Hiss! Realizing this, Lin Yi and the others could not help but feel their scalps go numb. They did not expect that there would be so many living things in the magma. Although their strength was generally between level 52 and level 54, there were too many of them. If they fell, only death would await them. Phew, I want to clean them up and earn more points. Now it seems that I should forget about it. Lin Yi sighed. We can't afford to offend them. There are too many of them. Yes, if we fall, I'm afraid we will be swallowed by them before we can resist. Toyota raised his head and looked at the gradually condensing flame. He said in a deep voice, "Next, let's get rid of this guy first." As his voice fell, Lin Yi, Fang Yuanpeng, and the others raised their heads and looked at the ball of flame. In the sky, the yang flames and the yin flames gathered and condensed into a ball of light. Inside, cold air and hot air constantly merged and changed. The fireball flickered. In a trance, it drove the minds of Lin Yi and the others. After an hour, the fireball became more stable and no longer flickered. Buzz! Suddenly, the fireball stretched out and extended 4 limbs. Its soft arms waved, and its slender legs stepped out gracefully. The fiery red light bloomed like a rose, shocking Lin Yi and the others. So beautiful! In the whispers, Lin Yi, Yi, and the others stared blankly at the demon formed by the ball of flame. The figure was exactly the same as the one formed by the 7 volcanoes. Its face was beautiful, and there was a flame pattern on its forehead. Its figure was graceful. If Lin Yi and the others had not seen its birth with their own eyes, they would have thought that it was a peerless fairy. It had to be said that the heavenly saint who created this relic was terrifyingly powerful. Are you willing to dance with me? End of chapter. Chapter 667. All of you, are you willing to dance with me? A clear and elegant voice rang out, and the flames in the sky condensed into a graceful figure. She turned around to look, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Her bright eyes seemed to contain a soul, and they were captivating. Buzz! Beep, 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 beep. The girl raised her hands, and the flames suddenly turned into a feather robe that covered her graceful body. However, even so, Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the others were in trance. They only felt that there were countless voices ringing in their minds, and even the divine sense power in their bodies was released. Oh no, this is a bewitching technique. Shen Qingyun's expression changed slightly, and she quickly shook Lin Yi's body. Shaken by Shen Qingyun, Lin Yi was suddenly awakened. He shook his head violently, and the voices in his mind dissipated. Lin Yi raised his head and saw that Feng Tianyi and the others were slowly walking forward. Lin Yi's expression changed drastically. Qin Yu hurriedly stopped Feng Toyota and the others, shaking them. However, they were unmoved. No, they have been bewitched. With a slight frown, Lin Shui activated the 10,000 godly tactics. The surging power of his divine sense immediately turned into a giant hammer. Under the bewitching spell of the flaming spirit, Feng Tianyi and the others' divine sense power dissipated, and they were completely defenseless. Rumble. In the next moment, the giant hammer fell and heavily bombarded the heads of Feng Tianyi and the others. Humph! With a muffled groan, Feng Tianyi and the others immediately fainted. Buzz! Almost at the same time that Feng Tianyi and the others fainted, several flames rose and quickly returned to the body of the flaming spirit. Ha ha ha! A sinister laugh rang out, and the flaming spirit revealed an evil smile. Its eyes were full of flames as it stared at Lin Yi and the others. Beep, 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 beep. Below, the flames burned fiercely. Feeling the scorching temperature, Lin Yi, Shun Qingyun, and Qinyu could not help but frown. Ugh! After all, Tuda, Yi, and the others were divine little saints. After losing the control of the flames, they quickly woke up. This flame spirit is so powerful. It can actually charm us. After getting up, Feng Toyoi glared at the flame spirit with a grave expression. He had just said that he wanted to challenge the final guardian, but he had been charmed. He had lost all face. If it wasn't for the fact that he still hadn't figured out the flaming spirit's attacks, he would have charged forward already. Kakik! In the air, the flaming spirit waved its hands. In an instant, the flames below rose out of thin air. The flaming wyverns, flaming lizards, and fire snow foxes that were hiding within all leaped out, charging towards Lin Yi and the others. Buzz! Qinyu spread out her hands, and an invisible divine sense power instantly turned into a light screen, suddenly protecting everyone. Bang! Bang! Loud and clear sounds continued to ring out. The demonic beasts formed by the flames were like moths to a flame, constantly ramming into it. In an instant, Qinyu's face turned even paler. Hurry up and help, Feng Toyoi shouted. Only then did Feng Yuanpeng, Zheng Zhongyu, and the others react. They hurriedly activated their divine sense power. With their help, Qinyu's expression became much more comfortable. The protection in the air also became stronger. Almost every moment, there were demonic beasts formed by the flames falling down. Flames! Boil! At this moment, the flaming spirit in the air waved its hands again. In an instant, the flames in the entire space began to boil. Not good. Lin Yi and the others' faces changed slightly as they stared at the flaming spirit. Bang! 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 Suddenly, the sea of flames below everyone's feet began to boil. One after another, flames burst out and charged towards Lin Yi and the others. Boom! 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 Those flames bombarded the light screen formed by the divine sense power. They did not cause any damage to the light screen, but the light screen was sent flying. Lin Yi and the others lost their balance and quickly stabilized themselves. No! Feng Toyoi gritted his teeth and said, "We can't let it continue attacking like this. Otherwise, we'll be too passive. Senior Sister Shun, you'll be in charge of protecting them. I'll go and see what the flaming spirit is capable of." As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Toyoi instantly tore open a space. His divine sense power enveloped his body and suddenly exploded. Suddenly, the flaming demonic beasts in front of him were sent flying. Then, he roared and charged towards the flaming spirit in the air. Kakik! The flaming spirit was not moved at all. It continued to wave its hands and summon the flames in the sky. "Huh! Die for me!" Feng Toyoi gritted his teeth. His right fist was enveloped by the divine sense power and even emitted a silver-white radiance. Then, he punched the flaming spirit's head. Bang! With a punch, the flaming spirit's body exploded like fireworks. Frowning, Feng Toyoi retreated quickly. His eyes were sharp as he stared in front of him. He did not believe that the last guardian would be defeated so easily. Kakik! As expected, after the flames dispersed, They spun rapidly and formed a figure again. It was no different from before. Huh. Continued to shatter. Feng Toyoi's eyes turned cold as he punched again. Virum. However, this time, before Feng Toyoi's fist could hit the flaming spirit, a circle of flames appeared. Suddenly, a powerful force burst out and sent Feng Toyoi flying. Virum vroom vroom. The flaming spirit's body spun. In the next moment, dozens of fire circles appeared and surrounded the flaming spirit. A powerful repulsive force was constantly emitted. D*M. I don't believe it. Feng Toyoi did not believe it. He narrowed his eyes and covered his entire body with divine sense power. He leaped up and clenched his fists. Like a gorilla, he hammered down. Boom! However, how powerful were the dozens of repulsive halos? Feng Toyoi had just gotten close. Before he could release his divine sense power, he was sent flying by the repulsive force. Poof! Feng Toyoi's body trembled. He could not help but bleed from the corner of his mouth. When he looked down, he saw the endless sword chi spreading out and cutting the flaming spirits in half. Feng Toyoi gritted his teeth and stared at the flaming spirit in front of him again. Since these flames have a repulsive force, I'll crush them with my divine sense power. Phew, my divine sense is at level 59. It's one level higher than yours. I don't believe you can stop me. With a thought, Feng Tianyi took a deep breath and rotated his hands. The power of divine sense in his body surged like a fountain. Power of divine sense. Crush him. Feng Toyoi's eyes turned cold. He pushed out his hands. In the next moment, the surging divine sense power roared out. In a chapter that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.